to order, and I believe we have help in saluting the flag. Is that right? Okay. Out of the way. You have to press and play with the clicker, I think.
Oh.
With the mouse, I mean.
On the actual mouse, Bob.
Put the mouse.
Oh, I'm sorry. Duh.
But the
Camera has to go through.
turned away from.
So you're going to turn the camera away for right now.
Correspondence, Megan?
Nothing this month.
No? Okay. And then public comment. Did anybody sign up for public comment, Marcia? No? Okay. Okay, consent agenda. Does anybody have anything to extract from the consent agenda? Nope. Okay. All those in favor? You want a motion first? Oh, motion.
Or at least a second.
Or at least a second. Okay.
Consent agenda.
Where's okay, thank you. We have a second? Sure. Okay. Megan? Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Did you get everybody, Marcia? Okay. Thank you. Okay, we're down to reports. Board rules and conduct. You know, we had the pre-meeting where we had Kate come in and do a little overview. Is there anything anybody wants to talk about here from that session? Or we're good? Okay, all right.
We should look at policy 9005.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Because there's a repeated bullet point.
Typo.
It's a repeated what?
Bullet point.
Okay.
Bullet point number 3 on the first page of that policy, Marcia. And the second to the last bullet point are the same. Probably typo in 2011.
Okay. Anything else from board rules and conduct? Okay. Ad hoc Sustainability Committee charge, membership and timeline. This is something we've talked about previously. Everybody has in their packet a copy of a draft of the charge and then some data from when the cafeteria composting project took place. So I don't know if we want to go through the information or if anybody had any suggestions or questions or how we might want to do this differently as we create an ad hoc sustainability committee. So.
What I will say is that
Yep.
it was great to have a lot of community participation for those few days that we did undertake this particular project last year. I think there was learning that took place. I think there was a realization of the amount of waste that we collected. I think so. I think the graphs certainly show that in the two-sided handout that you have. I think my main point is that it's something well worth doing as long as we have the kind of support manpower necessary to continue that as the Ad Hoc Sustainability Committee discusses and sees moving forward in the future. I don't know, any members of the school administration want to mention anything, not to put you on the spot, but you know, I think there was a lot of collaboration took place in order to get us to those couple days.
Especially with the wellness committee and the continued communication. Again, I'll reiterate, the volunteers were a definite necessity, and I think there was a realization for some of the volunteers to be like, wow, you have to keep reminding, because even with our recycling that we have to keep reminding that trash doesn't end up in there. But for students, I think, practice that would be helpful for them to have that as part of what they do. But again, the volunteers are kind of part of that as well. So that's just one thing that we do.
Okay. So there's a little bit of background, then there's the charge. Did anybody have any suggestions or changes to the charge? No? Okay. The timeframe, and again, this can be a little flexible. We were talking about starting in January, just because of everything else that's going on, and then come back to the board potentially in May. And if it turns out that more time is needed, the committee can determine, what kind of time frame that they're looking at. Okay, and then there was a suggested membership, again, just to similar, try to bring in all of the constituents we think might make sense. Were there other areas that might be helpful to include, or people were good with this? Okay, all right. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that as one of the board members who was interested in establishing this, I just wanted to echo my support for it. I think sustainability is critically important both for the town as a whole, and Beecher has a unique position to be able to support the town's objectives with its work as a sustainable CT member. We just received the bronze level award, I think in October, for some of the town initiatives, including this, the food waste pilot project was part of that. We got 5 points for that project. So it is a way that Beecher is continuing to work together with the town. And I think this sustainability committee will really let us, give us some real planning time to figure out what the school can do in a more permanent sense in terms of achieving waste reduction and other sustainability goals. So, thanks.
What we've done in recent committees is for the parent representatives and staff is really just ask, just as part of the, your update or Gina's update, ask for people who are interested in participating. And then I think we've gone to a lottery when we've had more interest than we need on the committee. So if everybody's still okay with that, we'll do that again. We'll ask who's interested. Is there another board member, though? Claire has expressed obvious interest in this and pursuing this. Is there another board member who'd like to participate on the sustainability group?
What's your meeting plan?
I'll
Is it
participate.
daytime or evening?
We should do what works best. Once we have the membership, I figure we can pull people for the best, most convenient time.
I said I'd participate.
All right, And then I did want to add that Hillary Drum was one of the parents who helped coordinate the pilot. I know you mentioned having a lottery, and I know she's interested, and I'd encourage us to give her the space since she was one of the leaders helping to coordinate that effort.
Okay, so I think we just need a motion, and I know it's a long one.
I have another question.
Oh,
It's just
yeah.
this all good discussion in terms of procedural. So I got Todd down as being the additional board member. So is the board saying that we're going to have Hillary being one of the parents, and then we'll choose the other parent from a lottery? Is that what we're saying as a group? I want to make sure I'm clear on that.
I don't
I think
have,
we need to get that. I think we should get a sense of who's interested first.
Right, so we could send out a solicitation saying whoever's interested, right?
and you
then-
could make sure Hillary knows to say yes if she's still interested.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, so you're suggesting have her be part of the lottery?
I'm just trying to get clarification
Right.
of what the board wants. If the
Right.
board wants, 2 people selected from an open lottery, if there's more than 2 people who express interest, that is.
Right.
Sometimes, you never know. And, so I just want to know what the board's pleasure is on that. And just so you know, we would be putting out something to all parents in the first newsletter in January, because we do not have another principals newsletter going out until, I believe, the
Just-
first week of
just-
January, right?
January 8th or 11th.
That's okay. I don't think we're going to get a meeting
Okay.
together
Okay.
prior to, later in January.
To Bob's question, I think that it sounds like Hillary makes sense to be on the committee because she's done so much work, she's involved, she's engaged, she's thoughtful, she's already up to speed on a lot of the issues. So I guess if we could have one spot for her at a minimum, and then if you wanted to do lottery, then maybe the other spot could be lottery.
Yeah, that would be
It
my
just doesn't seem
preference as well.
fair, right, to have someone who did so much work not involved.
Is she part of the sustainability committee that John Gorham has mentioned here? That, in other words, if John couldn't do it, and she wanted to instead of John because of
I
obvious
think we're
reasons.
getting into the weeds that we
Right.
don't need to get into. I think that picking these people is generally the purview of the chair. I mean, I think if we just said how we want to do it, between the chair of the committee and the chair of the board, I think that that's easy.
All right, and that's my next question. Who's the chair of this committee? That was my next question.
Well, I assume it's Claire.
Okay.
Maybe, is that right?
Oh, yeah. Claire offered, she said she was interested. Okay, so I don't know Hillary at all, if everybody's okay with limiting the parent participation to one other person and us choosing Hillary, that's what people feel. So one other parent, and then Bob, whatever staff members are interested in.
We'll do the same thing with staff. We'll put it up to staff and,
Yep.
you know.
Same deal. Okay. So we need a motion, just brief.
Move that we establish the ad hoc class sustainability committee with membership inclusive of superintendent, 1 administrator, 2 board members, VERA staff reps, ad hoc town committee, sustainability committee member, patient representative, parent representative, sorry. So default to my normal day job.
Yep.
Parent representatives, Jane Roddy and Vito Esparro, and with the committee charge that they recommend sustainability projects to the Woodbridge Board of Education at the May 2019 regular meeting for the 2018-19, 2019-20 school years. Initial focus will be on evaluating the feasibility and benefits of Beecher establishing composting in the cafeteria to reduce food waste and becoming part of the Green Leaf School Program, improving recycling effort within the school, working with the town ad hoc sustainability committee. This group will identify funding options for sustainability initiatives, including use of grants and PTO, identification of possible grants available as part of the charge to the committee.
Second. Okay. Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Okay, great, thank you. Okay. So, lost my- Ad hoc enrichment. Steve, are we looking to you on this one?
Sure.
Okay.
So our report is before, it was in the agenda that we sent out. We met 5 times between July and December. We reviewed some of the options that are out there. We discussed kind of what Beecher is doing. The report is in there. I would say recommendations that came from the committee, a lot had to do with the fact that math was the focus of what we're doing, and we are just finishing up what I would say is the end of a curriculum development for math. So many of the things that we discussed is sort of in the process of being implemented, and questions that came up in presentations that were given to the group sort of did address some of the concerns that people had. And so I think in general there was a feeling that we should continue to support school-wide enrichment model that the district had already approved as part of their development plan, which include the clusters, the Genius Hour, Capstone, problem-based learning. We want to work on expanding curriculum compacting work, resources, and coaching to all grade levels. This got into the professional development, supporting resources, the feeling that some of the things that were presented were really wonderful things that are being done. We're just questioning the sort of how well it's dispersed in the school, and whatever we can do as a board to support the sort of equal distribution of some of these programs like the exemplars and some of the other professional development that's being done related to math workshop. One clear concern was our communication strategy between parents and teachers and parents about what's going on in math in the classroom and in the classroom in general. And so one of the main things we'd like to see is a communication strategy developed by the administration to assist parents in really understanding what upcoming units include, understand sort of the purpose of homework, and understand what's going on in the classroom. Provide more math workshop evening for parents and students so that parents can be more involved in sort of math curricular issues. And then something to look at sort of what we're doing for TAG right now programming and how we can enhance both the programming that we're doing as well as some of the consistency and how it's being delivered on a regular basis.
All right, did anybody have any questions for Steve? Or any, I know there was, you're on, yes, okay.
I guess I would just elaborate on one thing that Steve had mentioned, which is that I think that the staff and administration seem to say, look, we need a little bit more time for some of our efforts to take root. And so that's fair. And I think the parents would say, okay, let's, in 6 months or a year's time, let's circle back. Perhaps we should put in place some sort of measures or metrics so that we know that we are making improvements in differentiation in the classroom, because everyone's saying all this differentiation is happening in the classroom, and yet there are lots and lots of families out there that are saying somehow we're not seeing it. So I think that an important step would be putting in place some measures so that we can use objective data to see what progress we're making in that area, rather than just have the anecdotal information that this is great, or this is great, or this is happening. I think that would give parents a lot more comfort.
So we can put a report back on the updates on mathematics for our agenda for next year. You know, we can, at the beginning of the year, over the summer, we do a sort of discussion of what are we going to get presented at all the meetings. And it's certainly a topic that we can have a presentation on.
Yeah, and the other thing that we can do is maybe have you think about, you know, what kinds of metrics you either are currently marking or is something that would give us back. And I'm not sure, you know, like the level of differentiation, is it, you know, that we have, you know, 3 math groups when we break out? Or is it that, you know, within those math groups, you know, I'm not sure, you know, but that's something maybe you can look and then come back and say to us, these look to be metrics that we could come back, you know, periodically and say, this is how we're, you know, looking at this level of differentiation within the classroom for math. And then, you know, we can say that that makes a lot of sense. Those things are things that are objective and we can look at. So if we can think about, you know, when we can get that discussion back together, maybe sometime before the end of this year, so that we have, you know, we have an idea of what we're going to be looking at, so that people do feel comfortable that they're looking at objective information as you know, we can provide. Okay, and I think, were you done? Because I think, Claire, you had something as well? No?
I was actually going to ask about whether we would receive follow-up on these recommendations, so that actually dovetails well. I think I agree with Joyce that it would be helpful to have that reporting, just to make sure that we're continuing to evaluate what we're currently doing and whether we need to reconsider other approaches.
Okay. And I think when we get to the strategic plan, since many components are in the strategic plan, you know, in terms of these particular processes like school-wide enrichment and clusters and project-based learning, we can talk there, because I think Bob did try, when he gave us that update, give us, like, you know, check off points and some, you know, completion expectations and things, so we can look at that too and see if that's helpful or if there's something else that we might want to do there too. Was there any other comments? No? Okay. Do we have a motion to accept this, or we don't? Okay.
We didn't write a motion because we weren't sure what the board's pleasure would be in terms of receiving the report specifically, so.
The board is, no, you don't, okay. I don't know that we've done motions before with them, so, great. Well, thank you, all right. Did anybody have anything else on enrichment before we move on? Nope, okay. Then we are on PTO update. Nope, okay. Then we are on Mr. Gilbert.
Okay. And my report will be followed by Mrs. Prisco's report as well, so we have some continuity back to back with just some information. We're trying to meld together some things from both November time when we didn't meet and recently. So a few things we've crossed off the list because I think they're a little bit they're a little passé. They've sometimes gone by. But it's good to see all of you, whether you're here or whether you're on camera at home. Just a brief one sentence to say that the pool is open, and we're glad to know that. So that is a good thing. thank you everybody for your patience in that. Tonight I'll be presenting the proposed FY 1920 school calendar, and we'll take a look at that tonight, and you may have some questions about specific dates, and we have specifically added 3 minimum days for early release for students to increase the professional learning time for our certified and non-certified staff. So that's the one big change in the calendar this year as it's proposed to you. I was very fortunate to be able to go to the CAPE CAPS conference back in November. And just a quick note, I think I gave it to you in your board update a few weeks ago, but the keynote speaker, Mark Brackett from Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, was the keynote speaker. He's a dynamic, wonderful speaker who was brought to us as a whole state of superintendents and board members a lot of information about the role of emotional intelligence in learning and decision making and relationships, and so it was a great conference, and a lot of this breakout sessions really kind of followed from his keynote. I want to thank the board members who were able to go to the conference and to be able to participate. It was also great that we were able to highlight our robotics team at the conference. We had a table for our robotics team and some of the work that they are doing, and of course we have recently had some great accolades about our robotics team in terms of a few weeks ago, and we're going to invite them to one of the future board meetings. I know this is a long board meeting, so I did not want to invite them tonight, so hopefully we'll invite them to maybe January or February to be able to recognize our robotics teams. Joyce, can you give me the names of the teams who got their accolades again?
Yes, Orbiting Owls, Space Cadets, and Space Surfers. But I would say all 4 teams represented Beecher very well.
Right.
And just a point of clarification, I know that everyone's very psyched and excited about the robotics piece, but it is a science and robotics team competition program. So
Thank you.
science is just as important, and I would say the most important piece is the core values. And that is the hardest piece for a lot of our teams.
All right. Thank you. Congratulations to all of those involved. You probably saw this in my most recent parent update sent out recently, but we were very, very appreciative to former Beecher Road School students and current Eagle Scouts, Tommy, I'm going to say his
Lipsy.
thank you, and Andrew Bolton for the projects they completed on our school grounds. They're just wonderful assets to our school. So we thank both Tommy and Andrew. Our policy committee will be glad to know that the policy audit by CABE was just recently completed. They've sent their information to us, and we'll be hoping to set a meeting in January, not September, January, to start working on and sifting through what they have sent us. So that's up and coming soon. Okay. A few more announcements. Again, we've been recognized again by CABE for some of our publications. I'd like to congratulate our administration on the Beecher Parent Student Handbook, as well as the Beecher Road School Calendar. Both award winners and were displayed at the CABE convention. As you know, last week I presented the capital budget for Beecher Road, the same capital budget that you folks approved. I presented that to the boards of finance and selectmen last week, and we highlighted the need to continue to make sure we're being good stewards of this wonderful facility. So we hope that those projects move forward for next year. As mentioned in a recent board update, we continue to make sure that we are fully staffed for unanticipated enrollment and student needs. We have hired some teaching assistants recently, or in the process of, to make sure we have met the needs of the students who came in our doors this summer, welcomed into the summer, but we were not anticipating those needs. So we have done everything we can to maximize the schedules of our current teacher assistants, and I want to thank our current teacher assistants for the great job they do in all their work. And so we're meeting the needs as we add those positions for this year. I'd also like to thank a local businessman, Master Kim, who gave a generous donation of $1,000 to Beecher Road School recently, and we'll be sending him a thank you note, and those funds will be most likely directed towards physical education and other related areas. He has done that before, and we thank Master Kim for his generosity. As you probably unfortunately remember, there has been some very unfortunate anti-Semitic issues that developed in the community recently. As you know, I sent a letter to all parents and as well to all staff to address how we look at this from Beecher Road School's perspective, and also some proactive things that we are trying to make sure that we are putting in place. I also had an opportunity this afternoon to be at Amity. There was a There was an opportunity for a community action group to meet this afternoon. It involved members of the Amity School District, also the 3 sending districts, Orange, Bethany, and ourselves, a number of community members, clergy, and students as well. And so there was an opportunity for sharing and how we're continuing to move forward. Specifically here, we have plans to have Anti-Defamation League leader Marcy, and I can't remember her last name, Margie, here on, thank you, Tuesday, January 8th at 6:30. Actually, at 6 o'clock. It's a joint PTO/Superintendent's Academy evening, and we sent advance notice out through the principal's newsletter last week, and we're looking forward to having a very meaningful time on January 8th. We'll continue to send reminders to parents about that as well. If you're part of our facilities subcommittee, I just want to remind you that there is no formal meeting for us this month. However, we're encouraging facilities committee members to join the ad hoc town building committee this coming Wednesday morning at 8:30 at Town Hall for continued conversations about the Van Zelm report, as well as some of the low-cost proposals that have been fleshed out, and some action on that, hopefully, that will take place soon. So 8:30 this Wednesday, Town Hall, for facilities subcommittee members. And last but not least, happy holidays to everybody. I know our students are counting down the days till the last minute when the bus brings them home for an extended vacation time for the December break. So, and happy holidays to all of you here in the room, as well as those who are watching on tape delay in the camera. That concludes my report, and I think Mrs. Prisco has a few items to follow up on as well.
Before Ms. Prisco goes,
Please
does
do.
anybody have any questions for Bob on any of his items? Claire?
Just have comment/question in terms of our Board of Education and our response to the incidents that occurred at Amity, and ensuring that as a school we continue to foster as inclusive and tolerant of a school as possible. I'd love for our board to have a meeting, or have on an agenda at one of our upcoming meetings, time to really think about and talk about what else we can be doing in addition to the ADL presentation for parents. I think there's potential curriculum we could look at. There's a lot of different things that schools are doing, but I know that our diversity committee is doing some great work, but I think it's important enough that the whole board should be even maybe updated about thoughts that the diversity committee has. Just provide an opportunity for some more discussion around what we are doing currently and what we can be doing to be vigilant.
So it's a question for the board or for the superintendent.
No, I think it's
I just
really
wanna-
a suggestion to have an agenda item where we discuss, and so we'll talk the month
Okay.
before about what we all want to see in that discussion, information we want to have. So let's say we schedule it for February. In January, we would say, here's what we'd like the diversity committee to talk about, what you're doing in the school, and we'd like to have some information about what the ADL is doing with the kids as opposed to the program, and what other curricular activities or anything else. Is that what you were
Sure,
saying?
we can do it that way. Yeah, that's
Okay.
great.
Okay. That wasn't what you meant. I thought.
No, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So I guess I just add that if we can do that in the next few months meeting cycle, as a,
Yeah, I would
it's a
say-
new item, but
Right. If we
Yeah,
can
and-
talk about it next meeting, so that we have, and then we'd do it in February. Is that
perfect.
Okay.
Great.
All right. I think that seems reasonable. We've got time.
Thanks.
Did anybody have anything else for any of Bob's agenda items? Nope. Okay. Mrs. Prisco.
Thank you, everyone, and I know we do have a lot on the agenda, so I will be brief tonight. I do want to say thank you if you had an opportunity to visit the book fair. The PTO has totally raised it up again. I didn't think it could get better than it was, but Ms. Sherman and I were there a lot. So thank you to everyone who joined us on Family Night. I know that Ms. Sherman represented us at Family Night. Ms. Manlin was with Mr. Gilbert at the town. I was wonderfully sitting next to our Teacher of the Year, Liz Hegney, and at the Bushnell in Hartford. What a beautiful ceremony it was, and I got to walk across the stage with her as she received her honor as our representative here at school. PTO has also finished the first set of their socials. There are socials on Friday evenings for kindergarten, first, second, and third grade. They have all been completed. They each get their own. They do combine fourth, fifth, and sixth grade for the spring for a PTO bingo evening. So we thank them again for that. Hopefully you had an opportunity to attend our winter concert. Even with our little technology glitch, everything went off well, and the students, whether they were in the band or the choir, it was a beautiful performance. We're seeming to outgrow it was standing room only, let's just say that. So that speaks volumes for our band and our choir that we are growing. I know it's a little delayed, but we were not here in November, so the Veterans Day ceremony, it has become one of my favorite traditions now that we do. And it is inside, which is so very powerful. The band plays for us, the choir sings, but we have so many guests. And listening afterwards to the guests talk and how much they appreciate this opportunity to be recognized. And having Officer Lynch as our guest speaker always kind of hits home for the students because they know him so well and they see him in a bit of a different light. And then we have various guests throughout the day or activities in the classrooms. But I did want to take a minute, even though we weren't here, to recognize that as something that I think that we do here at Beecher, and we do it really well. So I've been wanting to add a little bit to my principal's messages, a little bit about curriculum. So I'm going to give a little curriculum connection, and this one happens to be in kindergarten. So we work in our units of study and reading and writing workshop, and we've added the phonics units of study. And our teachers communicate home via newsletters, and so a particular kindergarten teacher, many of them, we got to go into 3 rooms of all of them that day. They had word school on Friday. So what word school is each child brought in a stuffed animal, and they taught the words and the letters and the sounds to their animals, and then they used a part, either the paw or whatever they had, to write the letters. And they are little people, so we don't put them on the video, but the parents were able to see, and the teachers shared the videos of the students teaching their animals the sounds, the letters, writing, and it has been, it is highly engaging. But to listen to the students and the place that they are right now with their beginning sounds, their ending sounds, and moving forward, because they started with something really simple. So here's the curriculum piece. They started learning the name of their mascot. In kindergarten, it's Mabel, the elephant. And then they started with their own name. So it is something so familiar to them. So the transition has been awesome. So if you happen to know anyone who has a kindergartner, ask them about word school. And so I'm going to close right there. And so I will try to add a little curriculum component to each of my principal's messages to kind of give us a little window into the classroom. So as I said, I will be short, but if there's any questions for me.
Any questions for Mrs. Prisco? No? Thank you. Okay. So staff and student survey update. It's just
Yeah, so we have a short presentation, which
Okay.
we're going to put on the screen. I just wanted to, again, remind everybody where this report's coming from on the focus. So as you know, we expanded our surveying of our stakeholders last spring. We've always sent out a survey for parents. And this past year, using Panorama as our survey vendor, used by multiple districts, majority of districts in Connecticut, we expanded that survey to our older students who are able to take surveys with reliability, and also to all of our faculty and staff. And so lots of information came out of those surveys. You can't focus on every single thing, but there were certain questions that really grabbed our attention, things that I spoke to the board about a little bit over the summer at our retreat, and things that we have keyed in on, spoken to our staff about in the beginning as we got going in August. Our building administration will talk a little bit about this, but there's 2 questions we really focused in on for students. It was the question at your school: how much does the behavior of other students hurt or help your learning? And the favorable percentages there were enough to compel us to want to make action on that. And for the staff and faculty, how much feedback do you receive on your teaching or on your work? And again, that was another area that we felt really compelled us, that would really help to improve student learning and student achievement through that kind of feedback that we can offer everybody. So we've just started to break ground in this area. This is a new thing that started in September. This was meant for the November board meeting, and we'll just talk to you a little bit about how we've started to move the needle.
Thank you. So as Bob mentioned, it is a concern when we feel like students are saying we're struggling because some of the behaviors in our classrooms. So we communicated that openly, honestly, to faculty, to staff, and along the time of the release of this information, Bob was hosting some little forums for small groups where teachers voluntarily and other faculty members, staff, teacher assistants could come and provide some feedback of what they were seeing. And did that align with what the students were feeling and what they shared in the survey? So what did we do about that? Well, for us, we did some of our own learning through professional reading, which has become our professional book for the staff this year. The book is called Choice Words. It focuses on teacher language to help us, look at our language. Are we being consistent? So we read that this summer and then decided, that we thought this would be a great book study for us as a learning community. And that would help us, like I said, be more consistent with our language as a staff.
And we included all certified and non-certified staff in that professional reading.
In special education, we saw there were some significant behavioral challenges going on, and the data supported as well as our observations. And so in the spring, we started a social emotional support classroom. And so that has been up and running and really making a difference where they're actually working on teaching some lagging skills for these students. And the ultimate goal is for the students to be able to re-enter the classroom, be more successful, and not have an impact on the other students, have a positive impact.
So in August,
Can I ask a question? I'll wait till.
Can you hold? Thanks. So we talk about our August professional development and the summer training or for responsive classroom ongoing throughout the year. So in August, we looked at things like our positive behavioral support, our school climate plan, and then we needed to make a decision, how are we going to continue this work throughout the year? You may have heard us talk about last year when we offered a choice day. It was in March for responsive classroom. Things that people wanted, a survey was put out. What were your interests? What are some of the topics that you really felt you wanted to work on and grow? And there were 3 different topics offered. And the feedback that came was, are we going to be able to do this again? Because there were other things that I wanted to do. So this past November, we put the question out again. And while there was some similarities, so we had to offer one of them again, there were different workshops offered. Staff in November took a chunk of the day and they were able to go and continue their learning around responsive classroom. This is aside from our week-long training in the summer for some new staff and staff that hadn't been trained. It just helps us to keep that conversation going, to keep that learning new for all of us, because each year you have a different set of children. While the core philosophy of responsive classroom remains the same, you have to make it fit your classroom each year. So different needs for different folks, so we had that back in November. We also had to offer
PMT, which stands for Physical Psychological Management Training. I'm a trainer for the district, and what the goal was to try and have as many proactive strategies as possible. So I trained all of the teaching assistants who were currently hired at that time. I need to update anyone newly hired. We'll also have them trained. So the nice thing about that is they're learning de-escalation strategies. So proactively, they're able to keep situations from escalating and help the students to learn some calming strategies. And if things are not able to be de-escalated, they're taught how to safely handle them and to hold them and keep them safe.
As a whole staff, the whole staff does not get that level of training, but they do get an overview and strategies for trying to de-escalate and be preventative, prevent those situations from increasing to something where we would need some support for fiscal management. So we do have an overview for staff, and that happens in the beginning of the year. And then ongoing as needed, any kinds of questions that come up. Cheryl's a great resource for us, as well as our BCBA, our board certified behavior analyst.
And I also say that special education staff also act as a resource because for the most part on each grade level, they're in the classrooms, they're able to see and provide some strategies and suggestions too.
So how are we going to continue this? Well, we have our team leaders. So each grade level team has someone who represents them, as well as our specialists and our special education department at our monthly team leader meetings, where some of these conversations happen. What are we seeing? What do we still need? How can we support? And we'll follow these action items for the rest of the school year. And then in the spring, we will administer the survey again. Now, will there be a slight shift because some of our students will have graduated and we'll have, third grade coming in, but we are hoping to see a positive increase in how students are feeling about their ability to learn based on the behavior of others.
So do you want us to ask questions on the student portion before we go to this?
That's fine, sure.
Okay. I believe Steve has questions.
I was just curious, this classroom that you started,
Right.
where's the staffing? When is, how do we create a new classroom without?
So we took one of our existing staff members. She moved into that setting. Some of the teaching assistants. So last year it was very much, she still had a caseload going on, but this year that is her main focus, and it's she works directly with, so it's a special education teacher. The school psychologist is supporting her, goes in on a daily basis, and they're working on skill building. And
to your question, some of our special education staff had to pick up extra to do
grade
that.
levels. The entire team saw this as a need and worked together to
And
come
how
on it.
much time do the kids spend in this classroom?
It's all individualized, so for one student, it might be, the goal is for any portion that they can successfully participate in their classroom, they are, but it's very individualized, so each student is in a different amount of time.
Could be an hour, could be
be all
all day, depending on the students. Does that help answer your question?
And over the year, that may change, so as the students becomes more successful, they each subject at a time where they'll practice within the classroom, they're doing videotaping of what's going on in the classroom, so then they can really be prepared when they go back into that setting.
So how do they,
We also added a point, just remember remind the board, we added a 0.5 special education teacher at this time last year, and it's so we've added a 0.5 half-time position, so that assisted us also in freeing one person up to do this room, and then that 0.5 was an additional staff member, as well as others picking up some of the responsibilities.
And just from the perspective of the kids pulled out of the room, are they working on their math in that room because they're not in the classroom for math? How do you?
They're getting all of their core content, as well as the social emotional learning on those skills.
So I just had a question. I'm sorry.
Probably.
For now.
And I don't remember the wording of individual questions. I know that in the survey there was more than one question that tried to drive at this same thing. So are we looking to have the exact same questions, or are you looking to have maybe some supplemental questions? So I think it's going to be really hard to see a difference in this, depending on how they answer this. Was it because there was noise? Was it because there was something physical going on? Was it because they just are the kind of kid who needs silence to read? Well, so there's so many reasons for the responses. I don't know kind of if you're thinking how do we actually see whether we've had an impact, and how do we see, or maybe you feel comfortable that you know exactly what these percentages meant.
So the questions that we used here were developed by Panorama. They're standard time-tested questions.
Right.
This specific question is the actual question that we're measuring the metric on.
Okay.
And it's a good question that we could go back and ask Panorama. I think I know their answer, but saying to them, if we're going to be apples to apples here, I think we're asking the same question.
As soon as you put a sub question in there, you bias the original question.
Right.
It's very.
Yeah, I think I know that we talked about doing the survey every year for a little while because of some of the responses. I just think, especially with this age student, it's going to be very hard to see if you've made progress by the survey response.
And I understand that Panorama put together these questions, but if you take a look at the questions, they're not actually well worded. So I don't have them in front of me, but when I took a look at them, it just seemed like there was an opportunity to improve the way that we ask the questions?
I think the only way I could respond to that is that I'm not sure if it's many or most or what the percentage, but Panorama is has become a very well thought of across the board in Connecticut and nationwide vendor for surveys. I'm not a survey expert, so I will simply say I don't know. We count on them as the experts, and they've been embraced by the State Department of Education, and they've been used by multiple districts. I used them in my former district as well. I'm not refuting what you're saying, Joyce. What I'm saying is that they are, it's their business, I guess, is what I'm saying. So.
And these are students, so two things. One, these are questions for elementary students. So when you're wording survey questions, it might not sound well worded to you, but they normally get age-appropriate language for the age that appropriate. And even the parent questions can't be, graduate level survey questions when you're talking about a company that's nationally doing surveys of parents.
I actually heard anecdotally that there was a lot of confusion among students who didn't understand how to answer the questions. And I don't know if there was an attempt to capture that from teachers or even questions here. I can't remember in the survey. Like, did you feel like the survey made sense? Those type of sort of analysis or assessment of the survey within the survey. Maybe it's something to consider.
It's interesting to hear the perspectives for sure, and just kind of reflect on those a little bit.
And it's hard with the survey. I mean, I remember when we were doing the climate survey. One of the questions was, do you feel safe at school? And one kid said no, and it's because the bathroom floor was always wet, and so it was slippery. So the answer is, do you feel safe at school? The answer is no. Of course, everybody's freaking out. And it turned out, that it was a very literal response. And I don't know, and I understand if you change the questions, then, you've changed how you're looking at things, and there's some value to like asking the same questions every year so that you can compare things and see where things are moving. And I know, the questions were all normed for the age of the kids, and like I thought, wow, these are complicated questions, in some ways, and yet they were, made specifically for that age group.
We're not solving world problems with this survey. This survey is just a snapshot of the school. It's one thing that we look at. We're not basing everything that our administration is doing on this survey. This is one area that we're trying to get a little more information than we had previously. I'm just saying, I think we're getting a little too picking the weeds for a survey that kind of, in the end, when you're surveying, 800 kids or whatever number we're getting, if 10 kids didn't understand the survey, if 800 didn't understand, I think it would show up in the questions being all over the place. But we tend to get groupings, and kids tend to answer questions similarly. And so things do pop out as areas that, we didn't do as well as other areas. So it's one more thing I think that just helps us. By no means, look, the first year we had this survey, we spent like an hour ripping it apart, right? We had every single problem with it. But I think in the end, this is a survey that's being used in multiple school districts all over the place. And they're probably, yes, it would be great if we could make it perfect. But I think every question we ask, there will be interpretations by different people based on what we think we're asking and the answer we're getting. But I don't know.
So I kind of liken it to a universal screen. It's kind of a temperature check for us.
Yeah.
So kind of just getting the vitals, and this stuck out for us. Students reported whether, and Margaret, you are right, we will not know next year, last year, years going forward, what exactly was the reason that a student was feeling like they couldn't learn because some students were because the student next to them was typing too loud on their keyboard. Sorry, yeah.
This is something we've heard.
So those are things, but we certainly still want the students to respond. We want to do our best to make sure that we are creating an environment that the students can respond favorably. And we knew this was an area that we needed to work on with some students who may have been challenged, having some behavioral challenges. So we took that particular step, and we're trying to take these other steps.
So what grades are in this class? Is this multiple?
Multiple.
So it's multiple grades.
So K through 6, or is it 3 through 6?
Currently, we have 2nd grade through 4th grade, but it's going to vary depending on what students are in need of that type of programming.
And just from a survey perspective, I mean, are there 4 kids in the room? Because that probably is not going to make a change.
I don't know for confidentiality if I can say, but
I
I'll
just,
say
you
it's
know,
less
like
than
in
10.
terms of like
Less than
Margaret
10.
saying, what are we going to see? If there are 3 kids in the room, I highly doubt we're going to see major movement in a survey, because I don't think 3 kids is going to make the
Less
other
than 10.
846, you know, feel like their learning environment.
It still might improve our learning environment,
Right.
though,
But
which is
Correct.
more important.
Right.
But please remember, one child could impact a whole classroom.
Absolutely.
So
Definitely.
just
Okay.
to look at it from that side.
Are there, oh, I'm sorry, are there any other questions?
Yes, I do. Just wanted to clarify, and you may have said this, but the PMT training, Cheryl, that you were talking about, who is getting those trainings? I know it's a select group, but is it
Correct.
just special ed teachers or?
Good question. So the teaching assistants, this is the first time that all of them have been trained, as well as the special education teachers, the entire department. I'm in the process of getting all of them trained. But what we're required to do for restraint and seclusion laws is we must have a core team trained, which most schools might have 5 or 6. So by the time we're done with this, we're going to probably have 25 to 30 trained, possibly more.
And as well as us.
As well as administrators, and there's, psychologists,
Right.
like ACPA are also trained also.
Right, great. And you had mentioned how there's kind of broad brushstrokes taught to teachers and whatnot. I'm wondering, and I know there's a lot of PD and you guys do a great job with that, but I'm also wondering, knowing that our special education population is increasing, have we thought about encouraging or requiring our general ed teachers to have a little bit more special ed training, so within each classroom they have a little bit more support in their knowledge and skill sets?
So the PMT portion of it, I'd say the proactive strategies, that's the piece that we share, and that's really what they would need to have information about.
Mm-hmm.
And the amazing thing about the staff here is because it's pretty close to the 1 or 2 grade levels, they're working closely with those teachers, so it's hands-on with modification, with instruction. So they're doing all those things. There's probably more that we could be doing, but our special ed staff is really working closely with the teachers.
Right.
And also there are teachers who will reach out to me and say, can you work with me on this? Can you give me a hand? Can you take a look at it?
Mhm.
So
But you're talking specifically for special ed students, and I'm wondering sometimes there's strategies that special ed teachers have that work for all kids. And
So that's the
sometimes that
broad
can
brush for like the
Okay.
de-escalate. So
Right.
de-escalation,
Right.
problem solving, that would be the broad brush that all teachers would get.
Right.
It's the biggest piece that the general education teachers predominantly, while there might be a few, don't get is the physical side, which we
Right.
don't need.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I just have one other quick thing.
Yeah.
So in terms of, just the resilience of the other students, I mean, I know that depending on, what they're used to, somebody making a lot of noise next to them has no impact on a child because they're focused and they've learned, to do that. Are we looking maybe, almost the flip side? Are there things that we can have all of our students, learning that help focus, help block out some of the other things that go on?
So we do try to teach something that fair might not be equal. So I might be a student who needs to bounce up and down, so I might have something that I sit on, but it doesn't mean, I keep picking on Al, I'm sorry. So Al might have a band that he kicks on his chair because he moves around a lot, but not everybody else needs to have that, and that's okay. So those are the kinds of things so that we make it so that what you need might be different than what somebody else needs. And if someone is clicking or kind of tapping and you need to move, the classrooms are structured in a way where they can say, can I just move because, so that it's not always Al that has to move. Does that make a little sense? Yeah. And there's plenty of other strategies. We use things like study carols. Kids use headphones, and not just flexible seating. I mean, so you walk into a classroom, you'll see kids sitting kind of all over, so we do teach those things as well.
and also fidgets, so the continuum of doing something else. Some
Putty.
students need to fidget or they putty, and it's available in many of the classrooms.
Were there any other questions on the student portions? Okay, thank you.
So, again, with the staff. So this is teachers, teacher assistants that we work with, even our office staff. So we shared the results, and so we heard it loud and clear. As an administrative team, this is really providing more feedback to teachers and being in rooms and working with teachers is in direct alignment with what we want to do, without question. And that helps students improve, it helps teachers improve, so that works for everyone. So what we needed to do is say, okay, how can we get pulled in a lot of different directions? So while that might be our highest priority, some of the behavioral things that were happening pulled us, as well as some other things. But we made it a point this summer.
Yep. So we actually, another book that we read this summer was called Tell Me So I Can Hear You, and it's a professional text that we read that was really all around feedback and coaching teachers. And from that book, we actually created a survey that we sent out to the staff. It was just a simple 2-question survey requesting information from them about the kind of feedback that they would like to receive and how they would like to receive that feedback. So that really helped us sort of hone in and target what our feedback would look like for the year. And then we also created a tracking sheet just for our own use so that we can track the classrooms that we're going into and the feedback that we are giving, whether it is written or verbal or whether it is through our more formalized process of informal observations or formal observations. So we did that to sort of keep track of our own work that we're doing and to make sure that we're being consistent.
So we've added, so we meet as an administrative cabinet. We've added another meeting that is called Instructional Cabinet. We meet with Cheryl, Lisa, and I, and Bob. We meet together, we talk about opportunities for sharing how we're doing with this, are we keeping up? And it, we're kind of just getting this going, so it does go in a little bit of waves, and we kind of look and say, all right, last week was crazy. I didn't get in, I only got into this many rooms. And so we're trying to keep ourselves in check about that because it's important to us. And not trying to let some of the other things get in the way. If we can look at a secretary in the office and say, unless it's an absolute emergency, I'm out in the building, I'm just informally visiting classrooms and then responding however I'm responding, whether it's a post-it note with a question, whether I send an email, whether I see them and we have a little bit of a conversation about anything that we saw in the classroom. It could be as simple as a teacher assistant who has been working with a grade level about kind of behavior in the cafeteria and really having them follow expectations in the CAF. And a prime example, a teacher assistant came up and said, look, we've been working really hard. Do you think you could maybe send an email to the grade level? They've been doing such a great job. And it just happened, I had just said to Bob, I have to compliment this particular grade. They were doing, and the teacher assistant came up, I was like, that's a fantastic idea. Thank you. I followed up with an email and said, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you very much for thinking about X, Y, and Z. And that's a sample of an informal piece of feedback that someone is realizing, look, I did this, I took this effort, and that was received positively. So that's something that would be an example of what kind of feedback maybe a teacher assistant would get.
An example that in special education, if I'm at a Plan A placement team meeting and someone's presenting a report or answering a parent question, it might be some feedback on you answered that in such a user-friendly way that the parents could easily understand. You were so welcoming, and just things like that. It could be something very small, but it really makes a big impact on the relationship with families.
And as something as big as the questioning. So something that I've been talking with teachers about is silence in a room is okay. So if you're asking a question and I'm noticing that a teacher that's quiet for a while, that can be uncomfortable as an educator, but it means children are thinking. And you watch, if you wait a few extra seconds, 5-10 seconds, watch how many more students become engaged. And so that would be a piece of feedback I'd give a teacher. So, and this, remember, is outside of the formal education formal evaluation process that we've shared with you. But our instructional cabinet, which is where I was going, our instructional cabinet allows us opportunities to talk about these things that are not kind of not included on this particular, when we sit as our whole administrative cabinet and talking about the function of the building and some bigger ticket items. So we will continue this for the remainder of the school year again. We will again administer our survey. Shouldn't be that much turnover because many of the same staff are here, fortunately. So we're hoping that our feedback is going to have an impact and people will feel like they are hearing a bit more from us about the work that they're doing.
Did anybody
I
have
have
any
a
Question.
kind of maybe a silly question, but I'm just curious, the 2-question survey, how many responded to that? Like, estimate percentage-wise of?
I think I have that over here. In terms of how many people responded to the survey?
Yeah, no, to our survey, our feedback.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have that. All right.
I don't know the exact number, but a significant chunk, where we were both like, okay, good, like we got a
Right, yeah, I
good
was just curious.
response,
how much,
yeah.
right.
I don't think it was 100%, but
Right.
it was pretty up there.
Hard to get 100%.
Yeah.
And I think Joyce had a question.
Yeah, I have an observation, which is that when I took a look at the teacher survey results, you have a very high participation rate, and you have, by and large, low approval ratings. There's something going on there among the teachers. And yes, professional development is one area that clearly stood out as an area that needed to be improved in, but it seemed to me that there were quite a few areas that we would like to see I would like to see improvement in. And I was wondering whether there would be an opportunity for the board to hear directly from teachers. I mean, the teachers are the heart and soul of this school, right? And if we're honest about it, collectively, they're more important than any one of us in this room. And it would be very interesting to hear directly from them their thoughts on how to make this place a better place. I don't know if anyone else agrees, but I think it would be very interesting to hear from them. And, you know, there could be a public forum, there could be a confidential way that teachers could also provide feedback, but I think that we would want to hear from them.
I'll tell you that historically, when we have CAVE sessions, that is not looked upon as something that the board should be doing directly, that it undermines the administration that you hire, and that the board's role and responsibility is really hire and evaluate and feedback to the superintendent, whose job is management of those people below. So I can just tell you that anytime we talked about that over the last 10 years, it's normally not something that the board.
I understand. I think that when you take a look at these survey results, there are issues. I don't think you could come away without that feeling. And I think there needs to be trust. I think we need to trust our teachers. We would set parameters so that this wouldn't be a gripe session, but this would be a way that we constructively work together as one team to try to make this a better place. And so I understand the key recommendations, but I would ask the group to think about this as an option. Of course, there are always recommendations, but we're also, every situation is different. And so I would just ask the group to think about it.
And one thing that I think is true is I think this survey is is exactly what you asked for. It's anonymous. It's complete honesty based on the answers, and it's not that we thought that the feedback. It's not really professional development as much as the level of feedback, the amount of feedback, the quality of the feedback that teachers are getting from the administration. That was the first focus, the first question, where we had a very bad response in terms of the teachers didn't feel like they were getting good feedback, quality feedback, enough feedback, and so that's what this particular thing is. But I do think the survey is where we are getting a lot of that, and again, we've any participation by a sample group, because you're never going to have 73 certified teachers, come in and talk openly. And again, I think that this is, and if we need to work harder to make this effective, but I think it's it's the first one. I think it's very effective. There was very honest feedback, and very and we got a lot of information, and I don't think that we're ignoring any of it but there's no way to focus on 50 things. You know, we're starting with one. But certainly, you know, this is one where I would expect to see a real turnaround in the survey that you give again, because these are adults. They're seeing changes in every single day in what you're doing and how you're doing it. So I would be shocked if we didn't have a real turnaround on this. And then it's not like we're going, okay, well, great, you know, we fixed one thing. Then we're going to say these are the other, like, in our list of priorities.
But our job as a board
Right.
is to direct our administrative team to address these issues and report back to us. Our job is not to manage the school in the day-to-day operations and the management of the personnel that work in the administration. That's just not the role of a Board of Education. So if we're not happy with the survey results, then our job is to, during a review of Bob, when we're in private sessions bringing up personnel issues, we have that discussion, and that's the venue for that. And then the venue is to have Bob come back with a plan on how to address those issues and get back to us. But again, I think it's, you know, I think it's inappropriate for us to have an open forum, bypass the responsibilities of the administrators whose job is to manage the school. That's just my personal.
Well, I've got to concur with Steve on this. I mean, as much as the concerns that I share, it became very clear in the documents that I've been reviewing and as a new board member that as a board collectively, our, you know, reporting structure is that we work through the superintendent. And I think that we can certainly raise concerns as a board to the superintendent that then are you know, reported back to us in some way. But I do concur with you on the concerns, but there is a, you know, clear structure for how we're supposed to address them.
So one thing we might be able to do is to explore, or ask Bob to explore sort of ways, you know, we could look at other schools as comparison, as we've done for other things, ways that teachers are able to provide feedback, whether it's to Bob or to the administration directly, but sort of ways to open up that communication channel, so that if there, you know, in this situation where there's a survey that shows there are concerns about various topics, we're making sure that we understand them to the fullest extent beyond what, you know, A, B, and C means, and we're making sure that you have the tools you need and the administration has the tools they need to address these better. So, I mean, I guess you could turn that into a potential request that we explore how teacher feedback is received in our, you know, peer districts, and whether we might look at ways to improve that communication channel.
So to that point, thanks for bringing that up, because that actually kind of jogs my memory. So as was mentioned, I think a little earlier, concurrent with when the survey was sent out, or when the survey was being tabulated, I held 2 different sessions for certified staff last year at the end of the year, and 2 different sessions for non-certified staff. It was an open meeting. Come and talk about your joys, concerns, complaints, ideas, whatever. So in each of those 4 meetings, a handful of people came to each, and they were able to anecdotally just share their own thoughts. And so a lot of those, and what I will say, and as I shared with the team this summer, that the real beauty of that is that just like that whole thing about, you know, how's the behavior of other students in my classroom getting in the way of my learning, that was a big theme in those particular face-to-face opportunities that I had with the staff members. Not many people attended because, you know, people go if they want to go or they don't want to go. But and I would continue to do that again. I mean, I would think about doing that again in the spring. You know, as superintendent, maybe we do it together as an administrative team for myself. But it's valuable to. I think this is valuable information. This does tell a story. This data, and it's done anonymously so people can share whatever they think, but also then hearing some of the reflections and the stories behind that helps. So we did actually do that last year, and we want to really continue to do that as well.
Well, and it'd also be interesting to know, you know, we're assuming we have a problem. We're assuming that there's people who have issues or concerns that feel like they can't mention, or at least that there's things that they would like to potentially talk about and don't feel that they can. I mean, otherwise, we think we're okay, that the teachers have mechanisms to, talk to administration or talk to, whoever it is. So, again, based on the survey, I feel like we had really honest and plentiful feedback, and people were very clear about what they were unhappy about. If we think, as the management team, if we think that this is something that we need more opportunities for teachers, or if you feel like when teachers have a problem, they come and tell you. I don't know. I don't know how you feel about, and whether or not, from the WEA perspective or somewhere else, has there been feedback that, we don't have opportunities to really bring forth items of concern, and when we do, we don't feel like they're being addressed, so do we think there's a problem? Or do we feel like we have mechanisms in terms of faculty meetings and, access to you guys? I'm trying to figure out, before we spend a lot of time, trying to address a problem, do we have one?
So do I believe we have a problem? No. But I think we've given opportunity for people to share in a survey setting, in a personalized setting. We have structures such as team leader meetings where members of each team, first, second grade, kindergarten, special education, unified arts, are able to come together on a monthly basis to share and to work together with administration. We have regular contact with WA, with our teacher assistant union heads as well. So listen, there's always continuous improvement we can make. And that's the whole basis for our plan and our strategic plan. And this is clearly baseline information that and I personally I said to Pamela, I don't necessarily like our percentages. I said that to Panorama, and they said, you're in the ballpark. You're in the ballpark for the first time around, and you're identifying where your needs are and how you're attacking them. So that's sort of just the things that come to my mind first as I take a look at this. But
and I don't remember all the survey questions, but weren't some of the questions about do you feel like you can get information from your administrator and to your administrator? So maybe what we need to do is let this go one more time, do it one more time and see what falls out, and see if see if we can figure out. And maybe some of the consideration is, although Panorama is research-based and normative, they do all that. Maybe we can look at the questions and say, okay, we're comfortable that we are getting the feedback that that the teachers do feel that there's avenues for them to access, or from the student's perspective, there's questions that it's trying to get at what we're doing. So maybe what we should do is, before the surveys go out again, just maybe spend a little time on, some of the questions, and just, again, maybe even have, you say, this is where we're looking for some of this information. Maybe have you help us understand, some of that, so that we can feel comfortable that we maybe either do or don't have a problem, and this is where we're going to try to figure that out a little bit. Lynn?
And since you're, continuing the action items, and then administering the spring survey again, maybe there could be like a mid-year before the spring survey, like a little focus group check-in, or like your 2-question little survey, like, is there some improvement here? Are we on the right track? Do you have a suggestion for something else that we could be doing, so that they know that you're reaching out to them and reminding them, you've told them we're doing this, and are they seeing some benefits to it? Maybe that would be helpful, and would allow us to give you guys the opportunity to regroup and say, we need to do this more, or we need to, or we're doing great with that, but we need to look at this. A suggestion.
I'm not a survey expert, but I was wondering whether it's possible to give the opportunity to teachers to write in comments so you get a little bit more color and context and maybe some constructive suggestions as well.
I think, Bob, you provided that when you had your little focus check-in groups at the end of the year.
Were there write-ins on the survey? Like I know there is on the parent one.
There is an opportunity for qualitative comments. Not everybody does it. Sometimes, and it's a tricky business because sometimes the way people express things or how they express it, it's not the kind of thing that you just kind of throw out there.
No, and I don't think anybody's suggesting that you just list all the comments. But if there's an opportunity,
there's some open-ended opportunities for faculty and staff to do that, as well as for parents, not for students, just because of the nature of the time period in that.
Right. So are people comfortable if we readdress this prior to the next survey and just make sure we've looked at the questions and maybe get some help in terms of, this is where you're looking for, some very specific feedback, or this is where you're looking, to really show, and again, like I said, I'm hoping that we'll see a huge difference because, you've got a group of people, that know exactly what you're doing and know exactly what the plan is and are given that information, fairly continuously. So, so I think that if we don't see that, then, then we've got to say, what the hell? But if we see that, then I think that we're, the things that we're trying to do, we're doing well. And if there's areas where we want to make sure that teachers feel like there's opportunities for this other than an annual survey, then, where in those questions can we look to see? And if there isn't anything that would give us that idea, again, I know, you're not supposed to change anything, but could we add a question? Or could you get, feedback at faculty meetings or something, provide that opportunity somewhere else.
Right.
What is the timing of the next survey?
The survey's in the spring, right?
So it'll be in the spring. So
Like
we pretty
March,
much administered that
April,
in late April, early May.
Okay.
I think it was late, yeah.
Right.
And is the check-in that Lynn suggested, if it's already in April and doing it before, that would have to be pretty immediate, right?
Soon, yeah.
Is that-
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to try to do that. I think that interrupts the flow a little bit. I mean, do you feel
Don't you have staff?
However, I
You have regular
would
We
staff.
have
say that.
staff
So
meetings, we have PMC meetings,
I think it's
we
just a
have
matter-
two
I don't think-
liaison meetings, we have
Yeah,
open
just
doors.
ask.
I think
It's a
How's it
natural.
going?
That's a natural part of
Yeah.
actually, and following when in all the things that are juggled. The natural part of that is following up on some of the things that we started in August. When we rolled those kinds of things out and brought the information and said, "Here's what we're going to do." Is revisiting that during the course of the year, like anything.
Right.
So there's a natural aspect. I mean, I've gone to grade level meetings this year and asked questions about, are we moving the needle? So I know that the building administrative team does that as well in their own interactions with grade level teams or during the team leader meetings. So I think it's not something that we have to concoct it's in our mindset to already, because otherwise it's only a drive-by. Otherwise, if we don't do that, we're only just saying we're going to do this at the beginning of the year and then never revisit it. That's not a good thing. We want to, because there's an aspect of conversation, accountability, sharing, struggle with different strategies, and then trying to move forward. So it's a natural part.
I don't want to leave this it almost sounds like you're sending out a survey. You guys are walking around the school all the time. There's interactions with teachers constant between administration. I don't want to leave here with anyone thinking they do a survey and then everyone goes to their corners and no one really talks throughout the year and there's not a lot of ongoing feedback. There's constant,
Here's an example. There's a high number of teachers on the faculty who are part of committees, and there's a high number of committees that are working committees that work together, whether it's, and I look at Doreen, she's on professional learning, okay, professional development, okay, but there's other committees that, and there's a lot of shared decision-making, and at the end of the day, sometimes the buck stops. It does stop with the administration, and if there's a disagreement or we got to figure out, well, they got to decide that. But there, to your point, Steve, there's a lot of interaction between administration and faculty and staff. These three professionals are out in the building all day long, doing all kinds of things. So,
And I think that, I mean, to me, the point of the survey results showing that feedback is an area that we're not doing a great job on professional development is maybe not, again, it shows that there's areas for improvement. I'm not saying that we don't have areas to improve. I'm just saying from the communication perspective, I don't think it's that the survey, we get the survey and then there's no ongoing communications. I think that, we brought this up at the last finance meeting that, from a feedback perspective, there is no job anywhere where your manager has to review 37 people, right? And honestly, we have 73 people that need regular reviews, and we have 2-3 administrators who are tasked with doing that. In most positions, we've had this discussion in the past when we had less teachers and people say we have too many administrators, but the reality is if you want to do not just what's mandated in terms of the teacher review process, but if you want to have ongoing professional development in the classroom where the teachers are being reviewed on an ongoing basis and you're having communications, it's really hard for a school that only has 3 administrators who are also doing the PPTs and every other administrative task. Whereas again, in other school districts where there's a lot more people sort of involved because the district is K through 12 and you have a bigger back office that can support it, it is struggle. So I'm not surprised that the complaint is more regular feedback when, we have 3
Just
people.
to add one point to that, so yes, it is the regular feedback, and there are a lot of adults, and we try to communicate with them, and we have a wonderful relationship with WEA, and we meet with them regularly. But it's also that there are 850 little people here in this building, and they get us first, sometimes before the adults. But we do need to provide the feedback to the adults to help make sure that the students are getting what they need. So that is why we set ahead this plan for ourselves this year. Is it going to be perfect? I think I can stand here and say it probably won't be perfect, but I certainly hope, Margaret, that with the staff knowing that this is what we're doing and we're attempting, and are we getting in as often as we might want to? We might set ourselves, I'm going to get into X number of classrooms, but there are little people here and situations happen, so that might take me away for 2 hours where I'm not in the room, or Cheryl or Lisa, the same thing. But the staff is aware that we heard them, which is, I think, super important. We heard them, we've set this plan in place to make sure that we are acknowledging, whether it's positive or whether it's constructive, that it's something that they can work on. We've set this plan in place. And so, and I think in our communication with the WEA, I think Doreen would agree that our people have no concern coming to us with anything. Be it through a faculty meeting, be it through a face-to-face, be it through an email, be it through a PLC meeting, a team leader meeting, or one of the committee meetings. So yes, do we need to improve in a lot of places, but I think that our accessibility by staff is one that I think that they feel that they can come to us. So.
absolutely. Yes.
Okay, is there any other questions for the student or faculty survey?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another thing up there now? Oh, for us. I don't know why I have a seat over here. Okay. Strategic plan update. So everybody's on the same. No, pretty much not.
Okay.
One thing before we start, and I know, all of us expected this to be a long meeting, and there's a lot of content. My assumption is everybody has read all of this material in extreme and excruciating detail. So we are all operating hopefully from a place of complete knowledge about what's on the paper. So as you go through, just keep that in mind.
What are you trying to say, Margaret?
Yeah.
Keep it short.
So,
That being said,
we're done with the presentation.
No, I'm kidding.
No.
Yes.
So, just to say the obvious, there's a detailed action plan that's part of your board packet. These were provided in the November meeting, so we're doing them a month later. There's a detailed action plan, and then there is the high-level summary, which we have in front of us, which is what I'm going to be going through, and I'm really going to go through it fairly rapidly because I think that's what it really calls for. And so I will just say this again. This plan was put into place almost 2 years ago. It was after 6 months of an entry plan where I got to know the district got to know me. I heard all the different stakeholders and heard all the different thoughts about what we're excelling in, areas of need, areas of growth we would like to see, hopes and dreams. At the end of that 6 months, this was developed using a guiding coalition, I'll call that, but an extended cabinet or an expanded cabinet of other stakeholders who helped me to kind of assimilate the data and to really try to capture what we as a district, all the stakeholders really were hoping for. So this plan has been now alive and well for 2 years. It's starting to ebb and flow a little bit, which is what plans do. And this summary today is really to try to bring to you where are we now in thinking about what areas are conceptual that we still really haven't moved on, that we're thinking about them, or what areas have been initiated, what are developing at this point, moving forward, and what are actually sustained or completed, actually. And so that's what this presentation really strives to do tonight, is to just kind of give you a high-level summary of thinking about that. Everything that we do should be guided by our mission and vision and beliefs. You'll see this obviously in our budget document in a little while as well. These are the 5 goals in the strategic development plan. And we're going to just spend a few moments on each of those goals right now. And the way this will work is that, in the blue are the priorities for each of the goals as we go forward. And I'm just going to talk about where are we in those priorities, conceptual, sustained, developing, or wherever, and some of the things that we're actually looking at trying to move the needle on this year within those priorities. So under goal number 1, we have certainly worked on sustained and created our vision and mission. We are developing still our look at and our work through discerning high-quality student work, and that's really happening through the curriculum review and revision process. The main focus in Goal 1 this year in our work is to expand the visibility and use of our mission and vision, which is established. We spoke at the board level about wanting to embed in our Board of Education policies the mission and vision of this district and school. In terms of student work, through our PLC teams, the PLC team meaning each of the grade level teams acts as a PLC team, first grade PLC team, second grade. The Unified Arts is a team, the Special Services Department is a team. We're looking at reflection on student work and assessments during those meetings, very, very purposeful times that we look at that work and discuss units, assessments, and quality. And a big part of Goal 1 is moving the curriculum development forward. Eventually, hopefully looking at an administrative model, adding administration for curriculum leadership. That's not currently happening at this moment, but that's something that we're continuing to look forward and talking about. The next couple slides, I will say that we spent a lot of time on these slides at one of the curriculum meetings a few months ago. And so I think they're we're really moving the needle on math. And by the end of this year, we're going to be pretty much done with math. We'll have the 6th grade still to complete. That's what that slide really talks about. In terms of science, we've really moved the needle in grades 3 through 5. We have some continued work going on. Already this year, we have been able to provide training to all of our K-2 teachers on the new science standards, and so that's happened. There's summer work going to come up this coming summer that we're going to continue to work on 5th grade assessments and start to move the needle on K through 2 storyline template work, which is actually writing the curriculum for K through 2, which we've really done for 3 through 6 already. There's some other areas that we have started to work on curriculum. Library media, spent a lot of time this past summer on grades 1 and 3. You can see it at the top. There is still more work to be done in grades 1 and 3, as you can see at the bottom, for library media. And there'll be other grades, obviously, it's not just grades 1 and 3 that library media needs to establish and address. We'll talk about that in a moment. Spanish has been well taken care of. There's been a lot of continued revision and yearly work on that, so kudos to that department. We have started to work now on social studies. We've engaged a consultant. We've held some think tank meetings. How do we go about this? We've determined an entry point for grades 2 and 3. We tried to pick grades that were not going to be too heavily saturated and working in too many other areas. We have established this coming March as a day where we're going, March PD Day, where we're going to work with grades 2 and 3 very closely and take the next steps and to try to move the needle in the summer with curriculum work for grades 2 and 3. As you can see at the bottom, there are many areas many areas for future curriculum review, everything from art, our English learner curriculum and how we address English learners, more work in library media, music, PE, health, and technology. This is not uncommon for districts. There's always curriculum work to be done. Curriculum is never done. There's a sort of a coined phrase. Curriculum is never done. We're always kind of revising, but we want to make sure we're at a point where we've gotten the meat and potatoes taken care of. So I'm going to keep moving. I know there are probably questions about some of these slides, but I'm going to keep moving, and then hopefully this all ties together in a story, and then you can go back at the end, and I'll be glad to take any questions or try to address any of those. Goal 2. Around student-centered and personalized learning, we have 3 main priorities here: the school-wide enrichment model, project-based learning, 6th grade capstone. There's a lot of work that's gone on in the school-wide enrichment model. Some of that has been sustained and completed. In the 3rd grade, enrichment clusters are a well-oiled machine. And curriculum compacting for 4th grade is similar. We're working, go right across enrichment clusters in 4th grade. It's just gotten initiated this year, and it started up this past fall. Curriculum compacting was a big conversation point in our math enrichment ad hoc committee. We're continuing to work in other grades this year to spread the work and spread the support to teachers in the curriculum compacting area across the building. Our tech identification process, we've initiated that. We have the plans all set. We are ready to do our 3rd grade identification process and change over to that in late January, early February. So we've initiated that, and you'll be hearing more about that in future board meetings. Our 5th grade project-based learning Genius Hour is developing, as well as the 6th grade capstone. So the work that is happening this year is really captured here. We're working with 4th grade to support them in their cluster model, the enrichment clusters. 5th grade Genius Hour, they've made some changes. They've improved their schedule. They've now embedded their work in this project into the language arts nonfiction time. They're now requiring a big portion for students. Grade 6, the capstone project for 6th grade, expanding the HERO project, connecting the community service. We're expanding curriculum compacting, and the new tag identification process is certainly part of our work this year. Goal 3, professional learning for everybody, not just for certified staff, but for everybody. And making sure our 3 priorities are moving along. Our professional learning community model, making sure that all members of our faculty are on a team, and they're on a team that's working towards student achievement, sharing strategies, using data. Those teams and leaders have been trained, and we'll continue to develop that because sometimes there's new leaders on teams. We continue to work on embedding professional learning experiences into our work. And differentiated learning plan, I will say that I am very proud of what our professional development committee has done with differentiating our PD days for certified staff. It's just amazing what a district this size has done. If you take a look at some of those PD offerings, I think I've sent them through board updates to you, that they're just truly amazing what is offered to our educators. We do need to do more to support professional learning for our non-certified staff, teaching assistants, and custodians and those who work in the office. We don't necessarily spend as much time in thinking about that, and there's also not as much time specifically for teacher assistants in their work year that they can actually do that kind of work. So we're looking at how to move the needle, and I'll be talking about the calendar in a little bit later in the meeting. But our work around Goal 3 in professional learning is to continue to train our team leaders, use data, and administrators, building administrators, going to PLC meetings, and helping to support the use of data in making decisions. Embedding our professional development in our classrooms and what we do in our workshop model, whether it's math, science, or even responsive classroom. We have a certified learning plan for our teachers that is, like I said, a great document and a great offering. We want to continue to do that. We want to provide more time for our non-certified teachers, teacher assistants specifically for professional learning. And hopefully we can do that partially through creative ways and also through some opportunities in our calendar for next year. Fourth goal is around partnerships, celebrating diversity and community. So in terms of our priorities here, we're continuing to develop the concepts and the stakeholder participation through our Community Diversity Committee, and also now reaching out and actually having planned events between town and school. And there's some things happening in January, which I might go to one of my colleagues to talk a little bit more in depth about. Partnerships and service and community, we have a great opportunity. Our band members, our chorus members, and our student council go out and do things during the course of the year, and sometimes it's in this building, but sometimes it's out with the seniors, and sometimes it's out in other places, the Sorrow Farm, whether it be the Memorial Day parade, things like that in Orange. So there's, I think, for an elementary environment, elementary school students, I think they're doing a great job of partnering in the community. We're still thinking about partnerships regionally and globally in a conceptual manner. We really haven't done a lot in that work, so that's an area that is still a frontier that we need to look at and how we want to move forward in that area. We have not spent time. We know what that might look like, but we haven't had the time to work on that. And then social emotional support, we continue to develop in that area. The work that's going on this year is really, again, our committee that we created out of this plan, coordinating with the town, developing a parent resource bank, community events within our school. We continue to expand events such as Field Day, Veterans Day, things that bring our entire huge school together. Service partnerships, as I mentioned, we're going to continue those that happen in the town. And then continuing to make sure that we are providing the right foundation of support for our teachers so they are able to create the environment in the classrooms that are necessary through continued responsive classroom training, creating that classroom community, the right language in the school, the right language in the classroom, I should say, our CARES assemblies, social group support that takes place during times like lunch or with our school psychologists or social workers. Those are the kind of things that we're continuing to work on this year. Last but not least is our fifth goal, which is really how do we maximize efficiencies in our district, in our building, in a variety of ways through our SRPI, which is our scientifically research-based intervention model, also known as just intervention. How do we provide intervention for students who need support but they're not qualifying for special services, special education? How do we refine special education service delivery? How do we continue to look at our building aesthetics in a very large school? And also roles, responsibilities, and processes and structures. And so, again, how we've moved the needle here is continuing to try to look at ways to restructure and to provide some of these things. And again, the work for this year is for SRBI, the intervention model. We now have two different teams, a primary and intermediate team, as opposed to one team that met jointly together. So we're trying to look at that from a point of specialization, and also trying to look at data and using the data team model as well to support that. Because data is very important when deciding how a student is either making progress or not if they're an intervention student. Special education, you heard a little bit earlier that we have actually in that 0.5 of an additional position this past year, we were able to restructure our special education staff. We were able to create a room that has been very beneficial for not just students, but also for all students in terms of meeting the needs of those students, but also creating and helping the environment and the classroom culture. Beautification Committee has made some very specific and very tangible differences in this building. Take a look at the South Gym, the North Entrance, the South Assembly. Over the past couple of years, there's been some very specific improvements there. Roles, we have, in efficiencies, we constrained ourselves. We cut back a little bit on technology last year, and that continues this year in terms of how much technology support we have seen so far that has been successful. You'll hear about in the budget a little while, in a little bit, you'll hear about how we have taken a look at our business department and how we've been able to take advantage of technologies for next year to reduce half a position there. In facilities, we continue to have a joint partnership between town, our independent consultant, and our own facilities manager. We've enhanced communication. We've initiated social media, Instagram. We now have an article in the Woodbridge Town News, and we're also trying to initiate, we are initiating report cards via Power School for the first year. And we continue to use the new revenue streams through pre-K tuition that we started last year, and also revenue streams through our shared services during the summer to help support our SRO. So that's a very quick broad brush. I'm not sure that's quick enough for you, Margaret, but that's as quick as I could do. And I'm sure that I've left you with a couple questions and some thoughts as a board for any one of those areas. Oops. So I'm open to questions.
I have a couple of quick questions. Actually, this is just more of a comment. In Goal 1, you don't mention language arts, and I know that that is a continuous curriculum update through our, work with, Columbia and stuff. But I do think, I don't want people to think like we forgot about language arts or something. So maybe Goal 1 should have some reference to the fact that language arts is under constant curriculum update because, like you were talking about the phonics or whatever.
So the units of study that have accompanied that.
Yeah, that came out of the recommendation from Columbia. So we don't set it up as its own schedule because we update it.
It's always.
Yeah. So maybe just make sure language arts gets credit because that gets updated constantly. And then for all of them, and this is mostly because we've been looking at the budget for 1920, maybe start to look at, in the next update, which maybe is in May or something, what's the 1920 goals? You don't get to rest on 1819 for long. And again, it's just because I think, we've been looking at 1920 for budgeting. And so the next update, if you can, move us forward into next year a little bit on some of these things. And I think, especially Goal 2, where we're looking at, like clusters, and we're doing, we've got 3rd grade under wraps, we've got 4th grade initiated, then where does that go, after that? So, and I thought this was very helpful, the detailed action plan. I can't say that I looked at every single line of that, but I thought that progress report and where we were was helpful as well. So, I don't know.
I have a small comment on related to communications. I feel that the superintendent's communications with the board, superintendent's communications with the ERS community and the principals' messages have been very helpful and informative. I will note that, and this might be on a more personal level, I don't know if other board members have experienced this, but at the classroom level and perhaps even the grade level, the communication has been lacking in my opinion. So I just wanted to address that.
I was wondering whether we could consider incorporating metrics into the goals. So thinking of this less as a checklist that we're just checking off actions, and more about thinking about, well, how do we know what we're doing is successful? How do we know what we're teaching is what we should be teaching and whether we're doing a good job at it?
it's I think for some things that's a very, it's something to ponder a little bit, because I understand the question, and I think we want to at times try to have as many metrics as possibly can. Some things are more qualitative in their basic nature, but some things could be measured. So I think that's something that I'll step back and think a little bit about and see how that might be able to play out in the future.
And I do think in multiple places you've mentioned, the data that the PLCs look at and, some of the other groups. And I don't think we actually purchased like a student data system, right? We've worked on homegrown.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the assessments, a lot of how we figure out whether we are effective in the smaller pieces of things is part of that data system that we have. That's true. So maybe one of the things that we need to do is get some information about how you're looking at it and how you're seeing, because the PLCs, I think, when they're together, are going, oh my gosh, we're not going forward at all here, or look at, this group's going way up here. What the heck are they doing? So I think that maybe some of those things exist, and we just, and again, maybe they're too detailed a level, but if you can bring it up a little bit, for us, as opposed to, each individual student and their progress. But some of the metrics that you're looking at in the PLCs, I think, are exactly what you're looking for in terms of how do we know that they get it, and then how do we know that what they get is what we want them, to learn. And I know we have like aspects and we have point in time kind of check marks, but we also have, kind of the stuff that our teachers are looking at every single day or whatever, however often. So maybe we can add that to one of our meetings as an agenda item, is just, what are those kind of, close metrics, and then bring them up a little bit for us to say, this is what we're looking at. This is how we tell that we've made progress. This is how we tell that we're differentiating effectively, because we've got kids and we can see the changes in their particular trajectory. So that might help.
Gathering of data, sorry, did I cut somebody off?
No.
Gathering of data and the interpretation of data can be extremely time intensive, but very, very valuable. So I would definitely support efforts to try and develop some quantitative metrics to evaluate our progress. Additionally, I think that the board or the superintendent's office could also really benefit from reaching out to some of the universities in the area for faculty that are conducting research that might dovetail well, or discussing with doctoral programs. They're letting those faculty know, or those programs know, that we have interest in investigating what we're doing. And there could be free labor in the form of doctoral students that could really help to build something that we could then replicate year over year.
Sounds like a few people you would recommend.
I would be happy to work on that behalf.
So the one thing I would say, when I think you opened with that we develop, metrics and stuff, I think maybe we have more of those than we are clear on. And so I think it would help for us to know, again, baseline, like we talked about with like recess time and stuff. It's like, what do we have? And then, what's our feeling about that in terms of, does it tell us what we need to know? And
Yes.
okay, did anybody have anything else on the strategic plan? And I know I asked you to be brief, Bob, and I appreciate it. And I think the strategic development plan is what we should all be looking at as, this is the 5-year plan. And as time goes forward, we keep moving it forward, and we need to make sure that it reflects, because it is the reflection of what our goals are and where we're spending all of our time and energy. So we just want to make sure that it reflects that. And I think it does right now. I just want to make sure that as a board, we keep that in mind. This is this is like kind of our direction.
I think that's a really helpful comment, and I think given all the new board members, it might be helpful to review what the timeline is for? I mean, is this feedback going to be integrated into making changes to the strategic plan, or is there another venue or time frame where the board looks critically at, okay, maybe in 2020 we want to start focusing on X instead of Y?
I think every time we talk about, we look at it every year, but I also think every time we talk about a process that we think might supersede something in here, we need to adjust it, So next month when we talk about, school capacity and what's our plan and how do we need to, to address that issue, that to me needs to become, a component of the strategic plan because it's not a small task and it needs to be reflected in the fact that this is a ton of time and energy. So I do think we need to make sure that it keeps reflecting what are our priorities, and if they change, if we decide there's something else that needs to happen, all the dates need to maybe get addressed because we can't do everything, but the plan itself, keeps track of all of that for us. And I know there's lots of stuff that goes on constantly that's not in here, but the big picture.
But I do think this is, we're sort of we're getting to that point where, and I think maybe if we talk about May, I think that's a point where you wouldn't be surprised to hear me say, at this point, you're not going to hear any more about X. But some of our conversations in the last few months seem to indicate that we need to add Y to this plan. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about, that the plan needs to evolve, where things have become now an accepted standard successful practice. We move them off the plan because they're done, but there's other things that have now become a priority that weren't there 2 years ago. So I think those are good words of thought to help move the next iteration forward.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments on the strategic plan? Okay, I'll have an agenda that's next.
So I do want to say thank you to the board because okay.
Budget is next.
It is.
What were you going to say?
I do want to say though, I want to thank the board first of all for 2 years ago embracing this, supporting it, and continue to support it. And I also want to publicly say that this work that's gone on is work that's being done by my colleagues. There's 6 colleagues that are sitting here in this room. So, and many more colleagues who are not in this room. It's work in many situations that's above and beyond the regular hard work and complex process of the teaching profession. So it's starting something, it's initiating something, it's following up, it's something above and beyond. Not always easy, added on. So yeah, I think you get the picture. There's a lot of kudos to the staff because this is not Bob's plan. This is the school's plan. People are excited about the things that you've seen on those pages, and I think that's the key of a successful plan. There was involvement, there was input, and there was genuine, we want to do this, and we're going to continue to make it better. Whether it's Genius Hour, or whether it's clusters, or whether it's curriculum work, or whether it's community diversity, or wherever it might be. And I think that's the beauty of this school is the personalized investment that people make, and they really you see it. So,
and I think we've said, that the amount of work and the amount of things that have gotten done is amazing. Just knowing, it's all under wraps in 3rd grade. It's part of what they do, and it's part of every day now is impressive. And I think now that we're moving to the budget, I think the budget reflects this plan and reflects what we need to execute this plan. And I think that's a big part of, when we talk to the town, this is our plan and this is how we get there, and it does cost money. And so, take it away, Bob.
Agreed. Okay. So let's change our
budget.
Barbara.
And again, you can assume that we have read these documents thoroughly.
Okay. All right. It'll be a test.
Brownie.
Go crazy.
Good. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Brownie.
So you have I'm not going through the budget book, which was posted first. There's a PowerPoint that was posted today, and that's what is up on the screen, and that's what we'll be reviewing tonight. So this is the annual time of the year, the December board meeting, to come to you with the superintendent's proposed budget. obviously for next fiscal year, FY 1920. And I'm looking forward to presenting this to you just because we're at an important point in our school right now, in our district. We're a very successful district. People move here for a lot of reasons. You see that in our enrollment, and we're at a point where we actually need to think about from a number of staff members to the number of needs for students to the facility needs. It's an important juncture. So I say that as we launch into this. Again, everything we do, whether it's the budget, whether it's a strategic plan, whatever we do, should be guided by our mission and our vision and our beliefs. And that's why they're at the very beginning of this particular plan. You'll also see that the 5 goals of the strategic development plan are here because those are key in moving our district forward as well. And we've just covered the nuances of what's going on right now in that plan. So before we get into the guiding principles for budget development, I do want to thank the administrative team for the work that they have done in collaborating with me and with Al in terms of putting this together. I want to thank all the teachers for the budget requests they've made, identifying needs, identifying target areas, and we've done our very, very best to try to assimilate and incorporate everything that's needed to the greatest extent possible into this. Our guiding principles for budget development is nothing new. It's always to improve the quality and also to develop a budget that respects the taxpayer. And that continues to be our principles that guide us today. The main drivers of this budget are no different than the drivers last year. And I will say that these 4 main drivers are obviously above and beyond the fact that there are contractual obligations that happen each year, salary increases, health benefit changes, and things like that. So these are obviously in addition to those typical annual expected events that contracts certainly dictate. But the enrollment growth, increasing special education needs, our strategic plan goals and initiatives, and the budget efficiencies that we are trying to also bring about are the main drivers of this budget as they were last year. The first driver is obviously enrollment growth. We have added in this budget a first grade teacher for next year based upon the demographic projections that our demographer has provided to us. Also, class size guidelines. It's important to mention that we did go through a process this year with an ad hoc committee to reaffirm the guidelines we have for K through 3, which are 17 to 19 students per class. Grades 4 through 6 are 19 to 21 students per class. And so with that in mind, you'll also notice, obviously, where is our enrollment been going? Ever since 2010-11, when we sort of, kind of, I'll use the word, reached a little lower point, we've been moving up, higher and higher and higher. Our demographer has definitely identified the right direction. Sometimes our actual numbers have exceeded what the demographer has told us. This year,
I would just dispute. He's never been right sometimes. He's just not right.
Kind of caught up this year. So this
He
year,
said he's right sometimes. He's never been right.
right, we're not going to tell him that at the meeting, but at any rate,
I'll say it on TV. He's never right.
This year we sort of caught up. We are projected at 841. We're at 843 now, so maybe we're the closest now that we've ever been. But nevertheless, next year we're projecting 25 more students. So this is the budget year that we're talking about. FY20 is 25 more students projected for next year than we have right now. And so this budget is trying to achieve addressing that with a first grade teacher, with a very important pivotal year in the life of the school. This chart you've seen from year to year in the past. You'll see the top left quadrant is the current year, 18-19 school year. These were the numbers that were taken on November 6th. You'll notice that the classroom we added this year is right there in the 3rd grade, that additional classroom. And that allowed us to move a very large 2nd grade last year into 3rd grade classes that were within the guidelines that we have established. You'll notice in 1920, you'll notice the 1st grade teacher that I've added. You'll also notice that the 3rd grade teacher that was there this year is not there any longer. There's those 3rd graders moving to 4th grade, and the 4th grade has a higher guideline 19 to 21 per class. And so we've taken that classroom position and put that in the 6th grade for next year, because the very large current 5th grade would never move to 6th grade in 5 sections. So if you can read across, you can see where we have moved that section, that extra section in 3rd to 6th, the teacher, but we've added the 1st grade class. That gives us a total addition of 1 additional classroom for next year. The rest of the years that are projected out, again, are projections, and you'll see in a few years off, there's going to be more classroom teachers needed based upon those numbers as they increase. I think it's fair to say, it's honest to say that with the exception of kindergarten and 1st grade year, all the other grades are really at the maximum of the guideline, 17 to 19 or 19 to 21, or sometimes exceeding by 1 or 2 students. So it is a guideline, it's not a mandate, but we're at the top end of those guidelines, no matter where you are.
So just out of curiosity, I mean, to get us into the guidelines, right, if we wanted to be in with our guidelines, we would have to add a 2nd grade teacher, a 3rd grade teacher, and a 5th and 6th grade teachers.
I think adding a 2nd and 3rd would probably put you below the guidelines to some degree. I think if you added those numbers, I don't have those. I think you'd actually be below 17 and 19. So that's why it's a little tricky. You might be into the 14s and 15s.
It would put us at 17, right? 1/9 divided by 7. 17.
You got to add the 20 on the other
What's
end.
What's our guideline?
17 to 19.
So we'd be at 17. So that would be 4 more teachers.
Are you including that? You do
Yeah.
have the 6. Okay.
Huh.
First grade was clearly the grade where the demographer showed such an increase from kindergarten to 1st. And 1st grade was a year that you don't. I would not want to have large class sizes in the 1st grade. So that's where we. The other grades we're kind of playing. In the last couple of years, we've been playing with those kinds of ranges and numbers.
I'm just pointing out that we had a classroom size committee that met recently that reaffirmed the guidelines. It didn't move them up yet. It was,
At the upper end of, right?
Right, and part of the discussion was we don't want to move them up because we already know that
We're at the upper end.
we go above them. And so we don't want to, we didn't want to make that easier to do, But the other thing that this shows us is even if we wanted to add 4 classrooms, we don't have 4 classrooms. We don't have 1 classroom. So, I think that.
I just think as you're presenting the budget, one of the things to point out is if we followed our guidelines to the T, to the letter of the law, we'd be adding 5 teachers for next year, not 1. I'm not suggesting we do that necessarily. We don't have the space in the school to add. Even if we wanted to add 4 classrooms, we don't have any more classrooms.
It's helpful.
But it is, it's a discussion.
Right, and it does point out the school capacity
Right.
situation.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. All right, so we're going here. So the second main driver of this budget, and this is where we're looking at specific and multiple staff additions, is the increasing special education student needs that we have. This budget adds 1.5 special education teachers, and I indicated there it's really to restore the attrition from prior years. And you'll see a graph in a moment. You probably already looked at it. We have not filled positions over the years that have been lost to attrition, and it's now coming to catch up on us. We've also added a half-time school psychologist and also an additional teaching assistant. The additional school psychologist, for obvious reasons, we haven't moved any of that staffing over 15 years, yet we know society, the social emotional wellness, the issues that we're facing, students need people to talk to. They need support. These are the professionals that provide that kind of specialized individual or small group support, including in addition to other kinds of things like testing or special education and other kinds of responsibilities. We continue to reprioritize staff roles and responsibilities when we take a look at teacher assistants, moving them from regular education to special education, or where the special education teachers are going to be placed in grade levels. All of this increasing special education staffing helps to address the percentage of students that are identified with disabilities. I think
I have a quick
this is the
question.
chart that I'm.
Can I ask a quick question? When we say the percentage of students identified with disabilities, do we mean special education, or
Yes.
we don't?
Yes.
Okay. Because I think the other thing you might want to mention is the increase in the severity of the special needs, because it's not just the number of kids.
That's correct.
It's the actual severity of some of their issues that are causing the need for some of this too. So.
That's correct, and I think we've talked about that, and some people have caught the factual part of that over time. This next page here really talks about a lot of things. I think it's a powerful set of numbers that helps us understand back to 2006 when we had 825 students here. Special education prevalence means what's the percentage of special education students in relation to our full enrollment. So 8.7% of our students were identified having some kind of a special need at that time in 2006. At that time we had 11 special education teachers for 825 students. We had the 2.5 pupil personnel, that's psychologists and social workers. And the ratio of students and teachers in that special education area was 6.5 students to a teacher. You can see the very middle, the special education teachers from 11 went down to 10, went down to 9, and then, as you can see, the enrollment on the left started to creep up. So now we are in FY19, the current year, 843 students, which is more than 2006. A higher percentage of students who were identified as special needs, 11.1. Only 9.5 special education teachers versus 11 back then. Clearly the same number of pupil personnel workers, despite the need from society and from the culture and from all the things that are going on where students need support, that has not changed. And the teacher-student ratio has greatly changed as well.
So Bob, are there guidelines for student-teacher ratios?
Not necessarily for special education, good question in that, and it kind of goes back to the comment was made, it could be nine special education students
Depends
for
on
me,
the
but
severity.
what's the severity? What's the weight of the student needs? You could have 12 students and they may have all mild learning disabilities, and that wouldn't be anywhere near if you had 3 or 4 students who really had very significant needs. So, it doesn't necessarily tell a story, but it still tells somewhat of a story in terms of just the sheer numbers. So that's why we are looking at recommending an additional 1.5 special education teachers, an additional half-time school psychologist, an additional teaching assistant in order to meet the needs of next year, 25 more students, over 11% special education prevalence, and the needs that are there.
And I know that we're looking to add teachers because of the need. Do we feel like the additions are meeting our needs? That the addition of the 1.5 special ed staff? So even though the 8.8, that's not really the driver, the evaluation is we feel like that number of teachers is adequate for the number and type of student that we have.
Correct. We actually, as a department, really looked at it and played it out with the actual students and groupings and worked together through that. So we definitely think it could meet the needs.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't speak to who could come through our door tomorrow or through the summer,
right.
but based on the students we
never
know we
speak to
have,
that.
that's what
Never speak to that.
it does.
You'll remember a couple of charts before this, a couple slides before this, we looked at where did the actual increase in enrollment start at Beecher Road School? When did it sort of bottom out or hit the bottom point, and when did it start moving up? 2011. So this slide really talks about what's happened since 2011 in terms of enrollment, but also in terms of what is the budget and what's the cost per student, the total cost per student. And 16,000, almost 16,500 in 2011, moving to just shy over 18,000 for next year. That's not a big change over 10 years. That's less than 1% of an annual increase total cost per student over that period of time. So there's been a lot of good budgeting, but also I think the previous slide shows that we haven't added the staffing that we needed to add over time, and now it's catching up to us.
I like this slide.
Al's reminding us, this is not the state data, this
Right,
is
this is
the
not the
data that we,
Right,
This is
we
just
got it, yeah.
strategic school profile,
include debt
doesn't include
service,
debt
doesn't
service,
include-
there's a lot of other
Right,
things.
so, exactly. This
This
is
is
just
just-
You can't
in-kind
compare it
services,
to-
school construction, all of those
Right.
complex calculations. This is just straight across
Yep.
what the enrollment was and what the budget was.
The operating budget.
Right. So it's not the number we see on the SSPs.
It's close.
this slide again tells the story over the years of the actual and projected outplacement costs. Students who, we tried everything possible to educate the students within the four walls of Beecher Road School in a least restrictive environment, but at times students need to have a placement somewhere else based upon their very unique needs. And so this tells a story of not just an increase in numbers of students, but also the costs of this kind of education, this kind of service outside of Beecher Road School. For FY 2019, as you see that second, the second from the right, while this is the current projection of what we are going to be spending this year, that is higher than we budgeted. Because as you know, we have a deficit in special education. So the actual, what we had planned or budgeted is less than $989,000, but that's where we are right now based upon the costs that have arrived at our doorstep.
And just for new board members, we never try to project where we're going to be with special ed. So when we do the budget, it's exactly what we know we're spending right now, and the sort of arrangement with the town is we don't want to start over budgeting and have all this excess cash. And the flip side is if we have extra money because someone leaves, we give that back to the town. So that has always been the relationship with the town in terms of that.
Right, but as Cheryl pointed out, we don't know what's going to walk in the
Correct.
door.
Right.
Ever.
Right, and we have to meet the needs.
And that's why what you just said is why, even though in the budget, the special ed out of district goes up 23,000, this is not showing that because this is our actual rather than our budgeted. But
Right.
Okay.
Correct. So the next main driver of the budget is just, again, how do we support the strategic plan goals and initiatives? And a lot of this is either at no cost or low cost or embedded within the staffing that we have here right now. So again, for goal one, the money spent there is really curriculum development money that is budgeted, and we're going to continue to level fund that during the school year as well as the summer. Goal two, we use our current staff members to support the personalized learning initiatives, clusters, Genius Hour, Capstone, our math specialists for curriculum compacting, so we can move curriculum compacting forward into other grade levels. Maintaining a core professional development budget of monies that also supports the professional learning community model where people are working together. Goal four is not necessarily a large cost in terms of the community diversity initiatives, but again, it supports that and how we work together on that. And then goal five is maximizing efficiencies of systems and resources. We have moved the needle and taken a look at how do we save money. We've done it over the past couple of years. For a small district, there's not a lot of places to look. There's not a lot of rocks to turn over and say, okay, we can find 50,000 here or 100,000 there or whatever. So we've squeezed things here and there. We've done a little more this year. We'll talk about it in a moment. Hard to find other places without compromising programs. So getting into the last part of the last main driver of this budget, which is the budget efficiencies. One of the things we're doing this year is we're reducing in our business office a half-time accounts payable position. So how are we doing that? We're restructuring this through using technology, and there's going to be a little bit of shared services cooperation with the town as well. And so that is a savings of about $50,000. We're going to continue to explore out-of-district transportation sharing with other districts, whether it's Amity, whether it's Bethany, Orange, or other places. We have done some of that before. We've had to actually discontinue some of that based upon student needs or student requirements, or students in other districts may not be going to the same out-of-district placements, so sometimes the transportation cannot continue. So we'll continue to look at that. Last year we started partnering with Amity for our Power School support. We'll continue to do that. We're getting more days and more training for less money than we were paying previously. In order to be good stewards of this building, and over the period of the last year or so, we have really determined that we need to increase in a small amount the maintenance personnel that helps to address the facility needs and the campus needs. 0.25 FTE really means 10 hours a week of a maintenance person to help on the demands of our building. And there's continued shared services where we're able to fund the SRO through cooperative ventures between E-Day and Summer Enrichment Program. The retirement incentive that we put out this year for certified staff with the early bird incentive has reaped us $80,000 worth of savings for next year. And we continue to look at the revenue stream of pre-K tuition and gaining a little over $20,000 per year, or about $20,000 for that new revenue stream which we started this past year. So those are really a summary of the budget efficiencies and revenue streams and shared services that we're looking at. So all in all, what does the budget do? So besides the expected contractual obligations and contracts that we negotiate and sign and adhere to, what does this budget do? It maintains all of our current certified staffing and programs. It adds 3 full-time equivalent certified staff positions, 1 classroom teacher, 1.5 special education teachers, and the 0.5 school psychologist. It adds a net of 3/4 of a full-time equivalent uncertified. That's between adding a teaching assistant, taking out the accounts payable, and we have the maintenance position as well.
Bob, can I
Yes.
just to clarify those numbers, we had to add into this current year's budget staffing that wasn't budgeted so when we're comparing budget to budget increase, and you say we're going up 3 certified staff positions, and you say maintaining current staff, are you saying what you're maintaining current? Is that actual now, or is it budget? Because I just think, again, it's, just so people realize, our budget from last year.
Good question. So you're talking about how I've needed to add some
Staffing
teaching
this year.
assistant time this year.
Non-certified.
So what you can envision there is we're looking at those people as being really added in a temporary thought process. So in maintaining that, I'm going back to what we started with this year.
Okay.
And then adding 1 teaching assistant above what we were originally budgeted for this year.
Okay.
So it's not those 2 plus another 1. It was where we started this year and 1.
Okay, just want to make sure that I understand.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question. Yeah, because I understand how that would be. Yeah. This includes technology replacement equipment. We have $87,000 budgeted in our technology replacement plan for new iPads. We have to continue to replace them on a cycle. Desktop computers as well. Office equipment, also making an allowance for new technologies so we can allow for innovation and creativity. We have $10,000 budgeted for new technologies. This supports our strategic plan, as I mentioned, and it certainly utilizes cost efficiencies. So that's what this budget does for our students. So this budget is a total of $15,519,603. That is an increase over our current budget of 5.77%. So this is not a typical budget increase. It is not a typical budget request. But I don't believe this is a typical year. And we're starting to play now the point where enrollment and special needs, especially if you take a look at over the long haul, it's caught up to us. So, you know, I believe we're at a crossroads right now where this may be a number that people would not have imagined, but there are very few districts that have an enrollment that's increasing at the regularity and the numbers and percentages that we have, and also the special needs. The word gets out. Send them to Beach Road School, send them to Woodbridge. They do a good job in a lot of ways. And so that's why that prevalence rate is moving up now to 11%. And that's a projection for next year. I'm not sure if it'll be 11 or if it'll be 10.9 or it'll be 12. I don't know. But we're projecting 11.1. So this budget, as you can see, is equal need for regular education as well as special education. Almost the same amount. We've broken it out because the needs are in both places. So, you know, 3.2% of this is regular education increase, 2.57 is special education. It's roughly almost 55, to 45% basically. So that's where we are with our percentage increase.
Would it be helpful to show for regular education the per student, so that instead of 3.2%, which obviously you have to show, that it's actually a lot less because of the increased enrollment? See what I mean?
So talking about it from a per student capita?
Yeah, so that it doesn't look like 3.2%. I mean, it is, you have to show that, but it's actually a lot less because of the increased enrollment. So if you break it down per student.
But the budget.
Well, they'll want to know what that, so that's why we
Right.
put that earlier slide in that showed over the last 10 years, I mean, you think of less than 1%. I mean, we haven't really kind of maintained, every year the budget went up by 3%, but we were cutting things and not recognizing increased enrollment.
I mean, I just think that highlighting it on this, like, this is the page that's going to catch everyone's attention. 5.77%.
Yeah, part of the problem is of the 3.2, there's only one position. That's because of increased enrollment. And one position, I don't know what percent of the 3.2% one teacher is. But I'm not sure it's because most of our costs increase in regular ed is not because of increasing enrollment. We're not adding staff other than the one teacher. I mean, we're really, those are contractual obligations, and so.
No, but one teacher would, I mean, if you took out one teacher from that thing, you would drop that number to below 3% and no one would say that that's a significant increase. I mean, that's our budget increases in the 2% range. So, I mean,
I think that this particular chart also is it's a familiar, not just to some of you who've seen this before, but it's also a familiar way of capturing it from year to year. And I think the townsfolk as well, when the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen are kind of used to seeing, kind of it played out. They're kind of looking from year to year on that. Good, Al.
So this is actually a little different than historical, because historically we've carved out just outplacements for special ed. This is our in-district and out-of-district, so it's a little bit of a new way of looking at it.
This next slide just shows the summary of where the increases are. So these are the increases in some of the major categories. Salaries does include the new hires, retirements, and the savings there as well. The benefits, assuming 10% of a health insurance change in the new rates. It's too early to know exactly what they are, but that's not out of the realm of possibility, for sure. Property services, you can see there's an increase in property because we're continuing to make sure that we have the right maintenance in a very high-end system that has been installed here, and we have found that we needed to increase that area of the budget to make sure we're doing right by the facility. But these are the main categories of the increase. So where does that increase fall in the past years? Obviously, it falls a little above anything that we've ever had before. We've had some increases in the 4s. Obviously, this is a slide certainly to reflect for a moment, step back and say thank you to the taxpayers of Woodbridge for the great support they've given to our district over the years. Any given year, there was needs may have been different, but certainly there's a great gratitude for working together with the taxpayers and our appreciation. Some of you know, each year we make sure to kind of remind ourselves, so what happens about money and when we have it to return to the town. Okay, so over the last 10 years, there's been a return of $680,000 of surplus. That's just regular operating budget money. There was money left over at the end of the year for the operating budget. It got returned to the town. That's what it totaled. We get, or we don't, but the town gets excess cost grant for special education. It goes directly to the town. It does not go in our budget. Each town does that a little differently. It does not come to our budget. It comes to the town, and it's been in excess of $760,000 over the past 2 years. And so those are monies all coming to the town, and occasionally, as we did this past year, we sometimes have to ask for a supplemental appropriation if our unexpected or unanticipated special education costs or other costs exceed what we had budgeted. And so that's the amount that over the past 10 years has been appropriated by the town to help us when unexpected things arose. Where does the money go? We know that education is a very human resource intensive area. Over 75% of the budget goes to salary and benefits, and it's spread out, and the remaining 24% is spread out over other areas, as you can see in the pie graph. And I guess I would just say that this is a budget in terms of preserving our current programs, in terms of moving our staffing forward, in terms of addressing our enrollment, all the needs. This is a budget that does ensure continued success. And here are the lists of things that, again, we think back on why this is a successful district and school and town, the achievements, the recognitions, the educators as leaders, the kind of community we have, the opportunities, and the support of parents in town that's guided by our strategic plan. So again, at the end of the day, at the end of the evening, I come to you asking your full support for an operating budget proposal of $15,519,603, which is a 5.77% increase. Again, a budget that I believe helps us to move past the crossroads of where we are right now, and it helps us to maintain and enhance and address all of our student needs.
It doesn't really address all of our needs, but that's
Well, and so,
it does.
There's one more slide that I don't have here, and thank you for saying that. So the slide I don't have here is what would we have hoped to put in here that we didn't feel was going to be doable or received, and that would have been an additional administrator because of the growing needs, the growing supervision that's required. Our building administrators in a town this size do not only the work of the building, but they do sometimes the work of the district because there's not a curriculum director sitting somewhere or different specialists in different areas and other kinds of staff members, professional development director in some districts. So our principal, assistant principal, and director of special services do those kind of things as well as our business manager. So I think it's important to recognize that another slide would have been what have we not funded in this budget. The administrator would have been that, and we've also talked in past budgets about enhancing music with a strings program. That's in the budget booklet. You'll see that there. It's been there in past years.
So I do think 5.77 is going to be a little shocking when it comes to the town. However, I think that you've documented a very, very good case for everything we're asking for. And I think we're reiterating that, you know, we have, the last few years, we have not kept up with everything that maybe we should have in terms of our enrollment, in terms of our special needs and everything else. And this is a little bit of a catch-up year. And so I think the 5.77 is going to be a little shocker to the town, but I also think that there is an excellent case made for that. I would agree.
I would certainly support this. In fact, I don't think it goes far enough. You know, looking at one of the most telling slides in this is the average annual increase, percentage increase per student, which is well below inflation. I think something that might be supporting you, Superintendent, is how do we compare to other districts? And, you know, you had a slide in here about efficiency, and certainly we've been doing more with less. We're also packing more kids into our classrooms, which is the best way to be efficient, but not necessarily the best way to educate our youth. And I would, you know, go so far, perhaps not for discussion tonight, but to understand better the mechanisms to address this with the town, including potential collaboration with our neighbors in Bethany. So thank you for the budget, which I would wholeheartedly support.
Okay, are there any other discussion items? Otherwise, we
No, I agree with the sentiments expressed, and I think Todd's points are particularly appropriate because I anticipate you'll probably get asked about, well, where are the savings, right? And there may be some specific examples of places we've been able to achieve savings, but I think the fact of comparing this in terms of inflation costs, you know, that's where our savings are seen, with minimizing the increase in light of inflationary costs. I think that's an important point to drive home. And if there are other savings that we've achieved through efficiencies or shared services, I definitely plug those as much as possible as well. This is up in the 5.77%.
I think the other thing, you know, from the town perspective, that, you know, is where they come from in terms of the increases. You know, our grant list hasn't changed, and so, you know, while we're seeing an increase in the number of students that are here in the school, the number of households in Woodbridge has not changed, which means the tax revenue from our households is unchanged, and so we're taking the same tax base, but we're trying to get more out of it for this school in particular, which makes it hard to absorb a 5.77 increase when you're not seeing a rise in that same number of new houses being built with students coming in. It's just people who are paying the good taxes and not sending kids to the school, exchanging that for people who are paying the same taxes and sending 2 kids to school or 3 kids to school. So I think that's that's an issue that we have in this town. That's difficult because we don't have a good commercial base that doesn't grow, you know, as the economy grows or other things change. But I do think, you know, I mean, I think that the savings and the fact that even though this is a big number and the biggest number that I've been on the board 10 years, we've never had a number this large that we went to the town with. But, you know, my argument actually, I would agree with you that it actually doesn't go far enough. And if we had space in this building, I would be pushing for more teachers. I know we don't have the space, so, you know, to ask for it and not be able to actually put them anywhere doesn't really help us. But I think, you know, we've made class sizes an important component to this, and we've looked at our teaching grid and we've done things to try to maintain, you know, the class sizes. So I think the town will also need to know that 5.77 sounds like a lot, but it may not be followed up with a small number because we're going to have to do something to address, you know, the growing population of students, and we can't go another year with, you know, class sizes that get larger if the student body does increase, which will raise other questions that we're going to have to address anyway in terms of school capacity and what we're going to do.
And I think we just need to be a little careful on the slide where we talk about less than 1% every year. We are doing a different calculation than, than anything that we're comparing to other districts or anything else. So, I think that's a valuable slide. I think it shows, if you just take these two numbers, which are very important, you get this percentage and that means something, but it doesn't mean that we've increased the budget less than 2%, over time. So we just have to be a little careful about, saying, well, we've only spent, this amount per pupil per year, but that doesn't account for all the other things that, go into the real total.
Well, but it's a measure of the operating budget per student.
Right, there's just, so her point is that there's no norm for this.
Right.
It's not like someone can go and look up Bethany tomorrow and figure it out very
Right,
easily.
and they're 0.5 every
So,
year, we're 0.9, yikes.
It's,
We just,
so that, yeah, I think it does show the story that the reason the budget, it's gone up by many, many percentages, but overall, our per pupil cost has not really moved out of line. It's less than inflation, is because we have been kind of trying to do a lot more with a lot less, because we haven't really taken into account the really growing student population. So to move the night along, I will move that we approve the 2019-20 budget proposals presented by the administration for submission to the boards of selectmen and finance.
second. Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Excellent, job.
Thank you very much. And I also like, I want to say that I could have just sat there and presented this and said, don't talk to me until I'm done with the presentation. But I actually think you're interjecting on different slides is working together as a team to advocate for something together that we know needs to happen. So I know your thoughts, your reflections as we went slide to slide are very helpful as we kind of take note of that, because this will be presented again at the town level, which will be a much different story, I think, in many ways. Even though I think we have a compelling position here, I think there still will be other kinds of questions, obviously. So thank you for your collaboration.
I know.
Okay, strategic budget. Okay, in the interests of tonight, can we maybe just move the calendar 1 month out, or do you want to do it tonight, Bob?
So what
There was
what I could do is, does everybody understand what the differences of this calendar are from the past? Is that an important thing to bring up now, or the only thing I would say is I know calendar has come up in different times in different years and different months, but in terms of being able to quantify what's actually happening, do people feel that we need to at least get the ball rolling here and then maybe deciding in January?
Can we
You're the board
just
chair.
take a quick bathroom break?
Sure.
And then we will come back and just real quickly get more liquid or.
Okay. I think our camera staff is very happy about the break.
Convening again. And we finished with the budget. We had a unanimous vote in favor of the budget, understanding what we're asking for and understanding it's going to be a tough sell, but it's this year's kind of a tipping point, and this is where we need to be. So, all right, our next item is the calendar. Mr. Gilbert?
So what would I just draw your attention to is that this calendar is worked out to a large degree in conjunction with some of our neighboring BOA districts. Our start date on a Wednesday this year, or next year I should say, August 28th, is in direct relation to the Amity Region 5 district, as well as Bethany and Orange. But I think more importantly, Amity, because families go to the both districts. We have our typical 3 professional development days before the first day of school, which you can see Friday, Monday, Tuesday. We have maintained generally the other aspects of this calendar as in the past. Some minimum days in October for conferences, as well in April. We have the typical days that like Election Day for PD. The day before Thanksgiving is still a teacher day only for PD. What this calendar has that is different is, and this is based upon the superintendent's observation of needing more professional learning time, as our strategic plan talks about, and that is having 3 minimum days added to the calendar. So these are still days that students will go to school, but they'll be here only till 1:10, or whatever it is, around 1 o'clock. And the remainder of the day would be for professional learning for certified and, to the greatest extent possible, non-certified staff. So those days are October 8th, the day before we're out on the Wednesday for Yom Kippur. The other day is February 14th, a Friday before the February long weekend, and also in May 22nd, before the Memorial Day weekend. These are sort of in keeping with other districts, our neighboring districts, in terms of the days they've selected as well. So I just offer that as something I believe that helps to continue to move our strategic plan forward. Professional learning is an important part of what we do. So I'm ready for any questions you might have on that.
I have a quick
Anything
question on the starting day. So we're starting, and this is really more towards the kindergarten staff, but usually they have an entire week of
Gina, please,
little increments. What is the theory here, that they'd use those 3 days and then Monday's a whole day?
So Wednesday,
Because we're starting on a
Wednesday would be a
Wednesday.
1 hour day for kindergarten. They have the
Yeah.
1 hour visit the first day of school,
Yeah.
and then Thursday and Friday would be
Partial and then full, we'd have to do that.
So Monday would go full.
Tuesday, Labor Day.
Because Labor Day.
I actually really like
So
this.
partial,
Okay.
so, sorry, partial, and then full on Tuesday. So 1 hour, partial.
Okay. And I know
Which
that
actually is what we
the
do.
kindergarten staff has liked the, incremental things,
gives
but I
it-
know the parents
It's
are
hard on
happier with, and this is going to be 3 days and then full.
Right.
Which I think, as long as the kindergarten staff, is aware and is, that would be my, I know the path.
I mean, I
This
think
goes
for the
to
rest of the
you
kids,
guys
if you think
before.
about it, it's a 3-day week, then a 4-day week because Labor Day. I think that's better for everybody else. Because it's an easier transition from summer. Yeah, so I think it's a great.
Margaret, this goes to you all before it goes to the staff. I mean, but they would be fully aware of, whatever our plan is here to make sure that.
Okay, and I was really asking, do we start full, like Tuesday's not like a partial day or something?
No.
That would make,
Yeah, it would be just that beginning week,
okay.
partial,
All right.
hour, partial.
Okay. All right, and then, the only other change is the addition of the professional development days, which, we, as a board, have been incredibly supportive, I think, of professional development, and this is even more supportive, I think, so I think that's
I think instructional time with teachers is incredibly important, and there's always that lingering. We're going to reduce instructional time, and so the question is, how much do you reduce instructional time in favor of professional learning time? So that could be the great debate here, but I do think that we have more topics and more areas and more need for follow-up on different things, and we have days available to us right now. So I just, I do think 3 afternoons moves us in a good direction, and I don't think it takes too much away from the kids. Although I know that's always a concern and a legitimate one for that, for sure.
I just have one question. I understand the need for additional professional development. I don't understand professional development on May 22nd. Nothing like, I just feel the year is almost over. It just seems I don't know. I mean, to me, like, front-loaded, but Lynn, you can.
I can only speak to that at years that I was here. In May, we did do professional development for planning for September curriculum in language arts with Columbia.
Okay.
So I also agree that it's late, but if it's used for the purpose of summer work that's going to be done and what's going to be done in September, then I think that it's a valuable time to have it. And I don't know if the administration can add anything to their thoughts of why they planned it that day. But those were things that teachers use professional development for when I was a teacher here. it was oftentimes during release time, which I would rather see it not be. I would rather see, especially at the end of the year, the teachers in the classroom with the kids and have a minimum day release day as a teacher. So maybe those were your thoughts, Bob. I'm not sure.
So here's the thoughts. I think we need more professional learning time. I also wanted to plan these on days where it made sense in conjunction with families who have a student both here and in Amity. So these 3 days, October 8th, February 14th, May 22nd, are the same days that Amity has where it's a minimum or an early release day for professional learning for the afternoon for those schools.
Okay.
Can we discuss not just on these 3 abbreviated days, but maybe all abbreviated days, something with extended day that would be along the lines of enrichment, since they could potentially have students for a longer period of time? I mean, I realize it's all enrichment, but perhaps some special programs identified for those half days.
We can bring it up.
How does extended day run if there's professional development? Aren't the teachers?
We have PD on minimum days at other times where it may be, sometimes we have teacher assistants who may do one day but not the other day. Like for instance, when we have our conference days, teacher assistants who may work extended day have to be part of one of our PD offering days, and then they may work extended day the other day.
Teachers, but, sorry, I'm
Sorry,
jumping in.
no, please go ahead.
So on minimum days, teachers do not go to extended day until after contracted hours. So that would be, Kathy knows that, and we plan with her ahead of time. So she does call in additional staff, either through some of the college students or the high school students that are available. And then we align our teacher assistants for, if it's the 2, I'll take the conference days. This half of the folks that are teacher assistants, and so we work with her on scheduling that.
Yeah.
She knows who works E-Day, and so says, can I have this group on this day and this group on this day, and then we assign staff otherwise. But teachers don't go in on this day.
I like that idea.
Except you don't have teachers.
Right, yeah. But, maybe
There are other alternatives.
Bringing in
Bring in the robotics club from the University of New Haven to do
Demonstration or something like that, or something that all extended day students might be able to go to on that afternoon.
or those that elect to go.
That might make the numbers more manageable as well, too. Our numbers are really large. Well, the numbers were,
Yeah, that's
not ours, but the E-Day numbers are large. That might help that if there's a large gathering. Okay, something. Students. Thank you for that suggestion.
So can we go ahead with the motion, and then if there's more questions?
I
Okay,
just
go
had
ahead.
one more thing that I had noticed is last year we had changed the wording for our February break, and the second day, the first day we listed as President's Day. The second day we had listed as Lunar New Year observance, and I just noticed that wasn't on there this year. I don't know if we wanted to continue with that, or if it was just a...
It wasn't left off for any reason except for we believe that last year's motion was a one-year motion, not a motion for forever. So I didn't want to, I didn't want to make that assumption. So if the board feels that they want to do that, then so be it. For sure. But I think we were just looking at it. We wanted to make sure we were true to the motion last year when that was decided.
They just have to also check what the date is. It just happened.
Well,
I
it
did-
is a little bit later.
I did
but-
check, and if this year runs from February 5th to February 19th, because I also noted that on the calendar.
No, this is 2020. 2020 Chinese New Year
Yes.
is January 25th is what I have. No.
You have through, what is it? I looked it up and it said February 5th to February 19th. Is that
For
correct?
2019 or for 2020?
2020.
Oh,
My recollection last year was that the day after President's Day, when we designated it, that wasn't actually Lunar New Year, but we wanted to make sure we memorialized the day to recognize it, so that was the day to do it.
Right.
So I think
Not
that's what
adding a day,
happened.
but just-
So,
Yeah.
that's
The
2019.
19, this is-
Or the 2020?
This is the
One line
2020
down.
calendar.
2020. This is
oh, did I?
2010. You guys are
Oh,
looking
I
at 2019.
did the wrong date. I'm sorry.
So here's what I think is true. I think we have always celebrated the Lunar New Year and made that part of what we do at school. So I don't know if there would be any reason why, I mean, if we want to recognize it in January, not as a day off, I mean, if we want to keep moving the recognition, you know, and putting it on the calendar, I mean, I think we have always, you know, within the school done a Lunar New Year celebration. So however we want to continue to recognize that, either on the calendar or not, based on the variability of when it is, you know, I'm kind of okay either way. People are looking at me. Because you knew when it
Well, when
was.
is it celebrated? Because that was the thing last year. It's celebrated over 2 weeks, so is it the 25th for 2 weeks to follow, or that's what I'm trying to figure out, I don't know.
Yeah, there's.
Because this just
They
happened.
celebrate for 14 days,
Yes.
right? And then,
So is the 25th day one? When is the Chinese New Year? That's day one.
Yeah.
And then it goes on for 14
Right.
days to follow.
yeah.
Okay. So 20.
It ends on the 25th.
I don't know. I just think that, where do you draw the line? Because there's so many different groups, ethnicities, and so it'd be nice to recognize all of them, but I don't know. I could see someone else saying, well, why Lunar New Year and not other ones?
Okay, so we either need a motion to put it on the calendar or leave it off.
I'll make a motion that we move to approve the.
Oh, wait, we're just talking about the Lunar New Year right now.
Oh, I know, but if I made that motion, then we could have a
Okey-doke.
discussion.
All right, you're right.
I'm going to move that we
Miss
approve the 2019-2020 calendar as presented.
Second.
Okay,
Now
any
we could
additional
have
discussion? All those in favor? Okay, great. All right. Okay, so upcoming meetings, TAG, this is where you're going to talk about the change in the identification process, how we're implementing that.
We had tag down here because in the beginning of the year when we set up particular topics for certain times. So tag, the actual new process for identification is the actual COGAT testing we're going to do, which has been described in the subcommittees before, is going to happen in late January, early February. So to really have the board feel well informed, I think more of a March presentation, to tell you the truth, will be better because we'll have gone through the process and we'll be able to talk more about how that went.
Okay. So is there anything else that we need to add?
Yes. So we have talked about, we have off in February, I believe it is, the accountability report. And this gets back to our conversation we had back at the 6 o'clock meeting. The accountability report, which is based in the different indicators that Connecticut uses to measure successes and growth for schools. We believe we can deliver that report in January because those results have come in earlier. Those results are now in. So we've typically given that report in March. We can get that report in January. And I think the board had really asked, if you think back to the SBAC presentation we did in September, we were talking about, you really wanted to have another gauge of how are we moving the needle on student achievement and student learning and things like that. So that would give us an opportunity. I'm looking at my colleagues over there. Are you smiling or not smiling at me?
I'm anything.
We're
sure.
ecstatic.
We're great.
Okay.
It's 10-10 at night. I'm awesome.
So my only question for the board is, I know that
Get me
we
later.
did a couple months ago actually get all of the accountability background and the explanation of the plan and everything. I'm not sure everybody's had a chance to go through that. Are we comfortable with the accountability report that's really the structure of which has been what we've received in the past?
So we could leave it in February where it is right now.
Well, if people are good with it, the sooner the better for me, for the accountability plan, but I just want to make sure nobody feels like they didn't have the opportunity to, say what they want. So you were saying okay, you were going to say okay.
I think that how it's been presented in the past has been, very well done and effective for what we've been looking for. So can't imagine that I would ask for anything different.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll put accountability plan on for next time. and we're not looking to change the format. And everybody has available the prior years, and we got links from Marcia on everything a while ago. Does everybody still have those? Because it was the actual explanation of the whole, like how they figure out every single equation and everything else. Marcia, do you remember sending that? Could you send it again?
Sure. Is it the 22nd? Martin Luther King
Is that
Day?
Tuesday?
Is it the 22nd?
It's Tuesday, the 22nd.
The January board meeting, 22nd?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did you just say yes, Marcia?
Yes.
So Board of Ed. Okay. Okay, so for accountability plan, we're good. The other topic is school capacity, and this is really the discussion about the fact that we don't have any rooms left. And so regardless of population of students, I mean, obviously you can add a couple kids in a classroom that's, you know, as they come in, but we're out of space. So what do people feel like they need to have a discussion about? What are we going to do? You know,
I think it'd be helpful to have a map of the school and literally what is being used as a classroom, what's not being used as a classroom, and what is in those classrooms, so that if there's a 450 square foot classroom that has one teacher who's meeting with some kids 3 times a day versus a classroom that's 450 square foot that has 10 students all day long. I think it would be helpful to just see really what's in the building.
and we have that, right, Bob? You said we actually have the details of this somewhere, like on a wall or in a thing.
Field trip.
No.
There you go.
Right now?
Field trip.
Oh.
We have the floor plan that we can make sure is updated. It can show, here's where a 4th grade class is, here's where a special education classroom is, here's where the school psychologist is, here's where this and that, all that is.
Yeah.
And it would be helpful for us, again, so if you have a special ed teacher who has a room but spends 90% of their time in classrooms, as opposed to a teacher who has 100% of their time, for the most part, in a classroom. Sort of what the utilization of that room is by those individuals would be helpful too.
So,
And how many classrooms we could fit in the library?
We'll go on.
At one point, when the pool wasn't open, we were thinking of maybe an area for a classroom.
there you go,
but
fill it in.
I don't think that really worked, actually.
Okay.
So I feel like I've had lots of discussions about some of our options here already in some of the subcommittee meetings. So people, what we're really looking for is room use. Are we looking for what are possible things we could do?
Yes. Okay. You were saying, taking a look at Bethany, because their population is decreasing. I know it's not going to be popular. We just have to lay out all the options, no matter how disagreeable they might be. You had mentioned Center School.
Well, I think
No,
those are,
I never mentioned Center School.
I think those
I
are
mentioned
discussions
sixth
that we would have, right?
Right.
We're not getting a presentation.
No.
I
But
think the thing is, what data do we need?
Oh.
I think what you're talking about is where the discussion might lead us.
But I think we do need to
We
come
need to have-
prepared to say, here's some options.
Yeah.
I mean, rather than start with a blank piece of paper, here's some options. Here's things we can consider. And, in the capital budget presentation, which I'm sure everybody's looked at, there was some data about classroom size and, what size of additional space is needed to create a classroom in today's environment with all the little places people go for things. So I think it'd be helpful to look back at that, at the capital budget.
About space at the junior high.
Yeah, that's what we had talked about was one of the things.
Space at the
But,
junior
I
high
mean,
school.
do we want
Like,
to-
in other words,
middle
moving
school,
6th grade to the middle
Do
school.
we want to bring that data to the discussion?
Yes,
or are these
and
things-
we do have data on the enrollment in all of the schools, all of Orange, Bethany, Woodbridge, and Amity since like 2000. So we'll bring that.
We'll provide that.
Okay, all right, so that's what we'll be looking to talk about, and people need to come with their thinking caps on. All right, and then the mid-year evaluation, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I mean, that's obviously.
Process that we
yeah.
already pre-approved when we do the contract.
Right, I'm just wondering if there's anything, I mean, we don't have, we don't
It
take
sounded
notes.
like from what Bob said that what was in the contract was that we all agree on a process.
Right,
So there was a process that was, that was articulated in the contract, per se. It was just.
so I think a couple things that would be helpful is the board self-evaluation, since they mentioned that at the 6 o'clock meeting.
Right.
Also the goals, the superintendent goals, if we can, include,
Those will be
include those.
available.
And then, I'm losing it in terms of history. Do we have, like, I know we always had a document that said, this is how I'm gonna,
So this is held in executive session, right? And
Yeah.
So I would be providing you with the structure of what my goals are for the year, which have been, sort of, informally discussed when we, in some of our conversations
Right.
from the retreat and all that. And I would be just providing indicators and some documents as to what has been going on to address those goals. And
again, it's not like we have prior versions of the review, because we don't.
The review takes place next.
It takes place in January,
Okay,
in
so we're
executive
not
session.
reviewing, okay, I thought we were reviewing the process.
No. This is his review.
Well, I think there was a little bit, I think that was a little bit of the discussion at the 6 o'clock meeting,
Right.
whether you wanted to internally review your own process and then.
Well, I think we can do that, but I don't think we can do that for this year's review, because this is, so we start Bob's year as an academic year, so over the summer, he set his goals. We have a mid-year review process of Bob's goals based on what he set. And so if we're gonna change that process, it'd be something we discuss after that, and it would be something we would discuss for next year's review cycle.
But I think we were talking about actually just going over, like, the documents that exist in terms of what the process is. or
Right,
not.
there was a discussion about whether or not we use the CABE recommended format, and I don't think we do from,
We use the Cape Caps format for your review, don't we?
We use.
No, we use that for self-evaluation.
Right, but then we
Use
also.
the K one for yourselves, and then I use different topic areas that sort of come out of. There's a number of CAPS documents and other reiterations of that. So there's a variety of leadership,
Okay, so.
communication, things like that.
Okay, so one thing that might be helpful, Marcia, can you get the CABES, I think it's called the CABE CAPS, like superintendent review? It's one Dr. Stella used to use.
Yep.
So if we can get that out to everybody, and then we have this is one format that can be used. Bob creates his own format of, reflections and, where he's at and stuff. And then, Marcia, if you can send out again the CABE self-evaluation form for the board, just because it highlights, relationships with the superintendent and things like that. Is there other information that people think might be useful? I mean, we can
I don't
have
know
your
what this,
contact.
so I don't know what the CABE document is, I just have a little bit of that's not how we started the year with Bob in terms of what we set expectations. I don't know what this document is, so if this document is just one way of us having a discussion about his review, but, we asked him to set goals, and we have asked him to present mid-year on where he is on his goals, and he presents that, and we review and have a discussion with him. I don't know that we should bring a new evaluation form in mid-year. I totally am happy. I just don't know what the document is. I just don't think it's, I don't know that it's fair to judge you on things in this CABE document that we didn't ask you.
All I would make sure is clear for
As long as
everybody,
you're good with
especially
it, I don't
those
care.
who may have not been through the process once, is just to understand that if you decided to show another document of another way of doing this,
Right.
that it's just clear to everybody that that's not the way that we were thinking about it. We've already come to an agreement within the last few years. We've done the same kind of process, and the agreement was this is the way we've been doing it. So that would be clearly just another way of looking at it, but it wouldn't be the way to look at me this year, because
That's all I just wanted to, I didn't want to put you in an uncomfortable position.
Not this year, but moving.
Forward, we
Yeah,
can
forward.
change.
Forward.
Yeah, right. Totally.
Alrighty. Facilities Committee didn't meet. Finance, I think we probably covered that in the budget.
Facilities met in November. And we
Oh,
didn't meet in
November. Okay, all right,
And we
go
have
ahead.
a joint meeting on Wednesday at 8:30 with the Ad hoc Town Renovation Committee. Facilities, we focused on the Van Zone reporting, making sure that we're identifying what needs to be done to address the humidity issues. We've spent a while on the pool and making sure we got the pool fixed as quickly as possible. And we'll be using, when the Van Zone report is finalized, hopefully this week sometime, right?
It's gonna be 99% complete except for one little thing that he tells me, but he's gonna have another edition of it tomorrow afternoon.
So
Which will be available for Wednesday morning.
So we'll look at, what upgrades and changes need to be made, and we've also been talking about ways to, there's been a lot of implementation of improved processes and oversight and maintenance schedules and those types of things. So I know that Al and Vito have done a lot to make sure that we're entering this winter in a good place. So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Okay, are there any questions for Claire? Okay, Steve.
So most of our discussion was about the budget, which you all heard about tonight. The only item I just want to let people know about is something that came up with extended day that we discussed at finance, just to kind of clarify policy. But extended day has had an increase in the utilization of 1-to-1 for special ed services. Extended day is a standalone program that is not supposed to take any money out of the operational budget of the board. It's supposed to be standalone. We just clarified that, and so there is funds in extended day, and they will be covering the cost of their special ed needs for this program, and moving forward, we'll plan to budget for those needs on an ongoing basis annually and put that into the cost of their operations. But I just want to let people know that we had that discussion at finance and just clarified the policy of the Board of Ed not to pay for extended day out of operational budget.
Are there any questions for Steve? Lynn?
So in the interest of time, in your packet, the curriculum committee meeting of November 8th, the minutes are there along with our curriculum subcommittee overview report of what we've done for last year and this year, and some potential areas for discussion going forward. So that's available to read, and I don't think I need to add anything to that. Our December meeting was canceled, and we'll be discussing the STEAM program in science in January.
And the policy that's listed here is the addition, since this year we added curriculum as a standing committee, which I think has been fantastic. I think the curriculum meetings are very, very helpful, and that we learn a lot every time we have.
And I would add that we have very robust discussions about what's going on in curriculum, and rarely is the meeting just an hour because of those robust discussions. So, and we invite people to come and participate in that
We need a motion to adopt
discussion. I'll move that we adopt policy 9132, standing committees as revised.
Megan seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
Can I ask a question about curriculum?
Yes.
I noticed we finally had a health presentation.
We did. It
Well, we've
was
been talking about that for 9 years.
yes, and it was really
Really good.
it was really yeah.
So
Well
have we
presented,
changed
lots
our
of
curriculum, or are we
information.
still teaching the same? Like, has there been anything that is different about the health curriculum, or are we just presenting what we've been doing forever?
No, I think that there are changes. I think you'll note that there's I don't know if the minutes reflect that.
It just says in the overview of what the health program is. I'm just curious if those
Right.
units of
One of
study
the
are
things that
new.
they talk about, she talked about was the inclusion of 6th grade CPR training, Heimlich maneuver training. Also, she works with the tech department on coordinating security issues with technology, health and safety issues around that. Yeah.
Music.
Do you want to add anything?
So it continues to remain abreast of the health standards as they are currently. Has multiple, we use multiple resources, and please don't ask me the acronym because I cannot remember it off the top of my head. Ariane would not be happy about that. But so trying to stay current and utilizing some different resources rather than some of the previous resources that were used before she moved into that role.
Yeah.
Yeah, she seemed very excited, very knowledgeable, and always wanting to update as necessary and trying to keep updated.
And even though we don't like to replicate anything, is this something that we should bring to the board?
Would you like, I don't know if you want to see anything or.
I just want to, we've talked about
Yeah.
the fact that our health curriculum is the same health curriculum that it's been for many, many years, and we're not getting healthier. And so I was just curious if we've made any changes to our health curriculum to reflect changes. And I don't know where we get our health curriculum. Do we get it from the state? Does the state say you have to teach X, Y,
Guidelines,
Z, period?
standards. And remember, we're really fortunate to have a health teacher.
Yeah.
So we are able to provide more than most elementary schools because we.
So how about if we see if we can ask for the presentation to be repeated, and hopefully it won't involve additional work.
Or maybe just if you can send the.
We actually have not posted that. I don't think we've actually posted that.
I was just going to ask that question.
So it could be circulated.
If you could just send it
this
to
Friday on my board
Thank
update. I could,
just send it as.
Would have been
You can send the
posted to
presentation, then
curriculum
we can decide if
so
what's that?
we can. Marcia has it.
Yeah.
Has that, so we can share it.
Share.
That'd be great, that's
It's
all.
posted,
Is
it should be available in e-meeting on the
On the
December
curriculum.
meeting that was canceled. Was it
No, November.
It was in
November.
There was a technology glitch. So did it post?
No, I think that was just her computer
Oh,
at that
okay.
moment. So yeah, it should be posted. So under the November curriculum, you can probably
The
find it there.
November
Got
curriculum meeting, it
Is
should
actually
have
there?
the
Can you see
health
it?
presentation on it.
Okay.
As an
Yeah.
attachment.
So Megan, I'm asking if we can skip the CAPE liaison report tonight.
Oh yeah, there's not really much. I mean, one thing would be the area breakfast on January 16th if folks are interested.
Okay.
That's at 7:30 a.m. It's our area 7. It's in Derby.
Okay. All right, so new business, act on the child nutrition program.
Al, do you want to say anything about
I
that?
move that we accept the permanent single agreement with the United States
I guess not.
Education's Child Nutrition Programs and authorize the Board of Ed Secretary Megan Genovese to certify the action of the Board of Education that authorizes Robert F. Gilbert, Superintendent of Schools, and Alfred Pulo Jr., Director of Business Services and Operations, as signers of the CSDE reimbursement claims submitted on behalf of the Woodbridge School District. We do it every year, right?
Every time there's a change in any one of those positions.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Sorry, Al. He was waiting.
Unless you really want to talk about it.
Yeah, it's
Al.
okay. No, do it over here. All right.
He's been waiting all meeting.
We have
Anybody speak up there for public comment? Only we weren't looking. No. Okay. We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Oh, wait.
I just want to say thank you, everybody, for all the attention tonight, all the support, all the questions. Thank you to all of you on the table, all of you who are in the audience. Thank you very much, because it's a long meeting and a lot of important stuff we've done tonight, and thank you for all that.
Well, thank you for all your time putting into the budget and really being thoroughly thinking it through.
Yes.
I mean, sorry if I cut you
Right,
off.
all the presentations
Yeah.
tonight.
All right, yes. All right.
Yeah.
All those in favor? We're out.
Aye, aye.